To the north of the Hunan province was a settlement called Akian. In the middle of the main square, a mysterious young man sat and carefully looked at how the wind carried the clouds in the blue sky into the distance. Once upon a time, imagining that no one could compare with him, a man brought down his rage to the world. Without blinking an eye, he turned everything in his path to dust. And peaceful people were horrified and panic, not imagining how to deal with it. The man ruthlessly destroyed his enemies and changed the fate of an entire era. So he got his nickname, the Omnipotent Spirit. He was the most dangerous person in the world. The Almighty Spirit is a title that the strongest man has always been appropriated. However, having finished his enemies, he became bored. But somehow, walking around the battle, he suddenly realized that he could not move his foot. In the middle of the desert, an ice avalanche suddenly appeared, which froze his legs, not allowing to move. It turns out that 8 immortal, 8 worthy creatures that protect the Median lands stood against the man. They noticed that the congenital craving for bloodshed in the young man is very strong. So he, without blinking an eye, committed so many atrocities. They would like to punish the criminal, but could not. There was no one who could stop the spirit of the Almighty. Even the strongest people of the world could not kill him. Therefore, they took advantage of the magic of ice and imprisoned the spirit. Hyun's Tang, Omnipotent Spirit, will not be able to interfere with them to live. They sealed it and hid it at the bottom of the deepest part of Lake Donchanho. So, from the date of his conclusion in the ice has passed 1,000 years. The 8 immortal victories were actually not interested in anything except feasts and entertainment, and therefore they received a knife in the back from their own kind. After 1,000 years, the Almighty Spirit was still able to get out of ice. Now he calmly walked in the streets of the city, since there are no longer alive those who would remember about him. A whole 1,000 years have passed. For people, this is too long. Hen is not waiting for Hen anywhere. He has nowhere to stop. It remained only to go forward, following the clouds persecuted by the wind. He is like a ghost stuck in the past. It must have been 1,000 years in prison were not in vain. It has changed. Hen no longer had that. Once, walking through the forest, the man stumbled upon a little girl. She was lying on a bare ground, it seems, unconscious, barefoot, and in a torn dress. Most likely she was an ordinary tramp. The man found a pulse and noticed that her heart was barely beating. She was on the verge of death. At best, she had 2 hours left. Suddenly the girl opened her eyes and looked impotently at him. Hen's heart was alarming at Hen, because she looked like him in childhood. Therefore, with the help of his energy, he decided to help a child. His magic was enough for it to overcome a critical moment. But the problem is that a man could not saturate her physically, only spiritually. In this forest it was hardly possible to find something edible. So he took out of his pocket Tanyak, a miraculous medicine created by the gods. He sincerely hoped that the pills were not so strong that for a child to become poison from the medicine. And he took a chance, putting 1 pill of the baby in his mouth. He did at least something, otherwise the child would definitely die, and at least the chances of life appeared. It remained to hope for luck, and it happened. Already by the next day the child has recovered. The man sat under a tree in the morning, basking under the sun's rays. Suddenly, a homeless girl brought a mandaman, a dish of Korean cuisine, reminiscent of dumplings. The man asked why she brought it to him. Did I really want to thank him like that? The child shone with happiness and joyfully handed the present to his savior. But the man refused to take a dish, and in his soul he felt a strange feeling. For some reason this child did not cause him fear or hostility in him. For him, it was something new. The next day the baby again brought him the same dish, but he again refused. On the 3rd day, when she brought him, the man gave up and divided lunch with the girl, allowing her to even sit on her knees. So 15 days have passed, and each time he ate what the child brought. The girl's simple-minded smile was something completely incomprehensible to him. Unknown, but not at all bad. Somehow Tang at Hin walked around the city square. His attention was attracted by a large accumulation of people, which consisted for the most part from the onlookers who surrounded the man, who beat the child with his feet. He was a merchant who shouted throughout the street and beat his feet a thief that she had repeatedly conducted it. But this time she was unlucky. The poor child was lying on the ground, trying to cover at least his face with his hands. Stepping closer, Tan at Hyun realized that it was the same girl who brought him food, and the crowd only approved that the seller pounded a small villain, and he demanded that she bring her parents immediately. But the girl did not answer and continued to endure the blows. Then Tanny could not stand it and decided to stand up for her. He hit the seller's leg, pushing him away from the child. And at the same moment the merchant left his lesson because he was too busy with his foot, which was sick as if she had been broken. The girl was able to escape from her tormentor, and then Tan, leaving the poor man to wallow in the square. also ran away from that place. Anger overwhelmed the heart of the spirit. For 2 weeks he ate that he brought this child and did not even ask where she got from. The baby gave him food day after day, and he just took everything. And now it turns out that she had to steal. She was also cruelly beaten in a few mandis. For some reason, he really did not like it and did not want to leave everything as it is. Since when does someone accept him except himself? Submitted into his thoughts, he did not notice that he had gone far enough into the forest. And suddenly he discovered that he was on the shore of a picturesque lake, the very one where he spent the last 1,000 years. Goosebumps ran through the skin when he looked thoughtfully at the Don Chonho. It is ironic that Hin's Tan, the great warrior who conquered the whole world, was at the very bottom. He would never want to see this place from now on. While the man stood there thinking about his life, he did not notice how that little girl appeared behind him. She was looking for him throughout the forest and finally found him. Tan thought when she would calm down, he healed a little. Therefore, he directly asked the girl why she was looking for him. She grabbed her little hands by the hem of his clothes and said pitifully that she simply did not want to be alone. Tang ate all his life alone and believed that it was hardly 1,000 years in the ice to change something. Nevertheless, he asked the name of the girl. She said that her name was Grabbed. Suddenly the man thought about it. What if the meeting with her was not accidental? Maybe this is fate. He stroked the baby on the head and also introduced himself. Is it possible that his place is next to this child? He squatted down to be at the same level with her and asked if she would go with him in this case. The girl answered him yes. And already in the evening they sat together by the fire, warming himself. Tan suggested Somi to go with him, although he even has no place where he could stop. Therefore, he decided that he had to build a house for himself and the baby. From childhood, he thought about how great it would be to settle in his own house, and now, his dream would finally come true. When Somi woke up in the morning, she found that the man was no longer sleeping nearby, but right in front of her a huge house appeared from nowhere. Tan built it in just one night and now finished the last details. The girl ran to him and began to look around in surprise. It was strange for her, because yesterday there was no wonderful building here. To cause less suspicion and questions, Tang lied that there was a house yesterday. He was just old, and the man had to finalize him a little. The girl stood on her own because she could not help but notice such a large building, but Tang did not retreat. Then Somi decided that perhaps she simply confused something, and the master tells her the truth. It does not make sense for him to deceive her. Yes, and she was sure that such a magnificent house could not be built in one night. And the yellow clay is incredibly difficult to get. The baby was delighted with an incredible building. The house was very beautiful. It seemed to get into the palace. Brunette was pleased that she was satisfied. He had to sweat pretty much to build it. Rather repair, he almost blabbed in front of the girl. It's good that she is still small and believes all his words. Suddenly, looking around the surroundings, she asked why this house does not have a fence. She concluded that perhaps that is why no one lives in it. However, the next day the fence has already appeared, Tanwai, and built it overnight. And the girl said that he was always here. She simply did not notice him from the very beginning. The fence was reliable and tall, which gave a sense of safety. But then the girl sighed heavily and sat on the ground. The man asked her what is. The fact is that it seemed to her that they had a little empty at home. There were no flowers or trees. However, as if magically, they appeared on the territory the next day. In the middle of the courtyard stood a huge and beautiful tree. Tan again said that it was always here. And also a wonderful pure pond appeared next to him. The house was already magnificent, but a lot still had to do. We need beds and other furniture necessary for a comfortable residence. But Tan could no longer starve the child, so they need to go fishing. The man with a smile thought that not so bad when life is full of worries. Suddenly, Somi remembered something and seemed to want to say some more comment about their new house. But Tan closed her mouth with his index finger. He asked her not to say anything, because he understood that if she was saying something else now, he would spend a sleepless night for construction again. After some time having rested, the brown-haired man began to work again, and Somi looked at how he made something. He made a special barrel to take water procedures. They must keep the body clean. However, the girl was afraid of water, so she tried to quietly slip away from him, but the man noticed her in time. Yesterday he sold the boar and wood caught on hunting, and bought clothes for the money received. But in order to wear a new one, you need to swim well. Somi flatterly noticed that the brown-haired man looks good, without even swimming. The guy agreed that he still looks tolerable, but the girl is a completely different matter. Therefore, he carefully took her by the scruff. She began to grumble and break out, saying that she is already very clean. But the man's grip was stronger, so the child did not work out. He forcibly pushed the youngest into the bath, filled it with water, and began to wash the baby. She was so grimy that the guy even asked how long she was washed for the last time, but she could not say because it was too long. However, after some time, when Tang finally finished, wiped the child with a towel and put it in new clothes, she felt much better and fresh than before. Now she finally became more like a decent person. And her clothes fit her very much. She was first dressed in something so beautiful. The girl was very pleased with her new way, so she spinned joyfully, smiling at the guardian. She thanked him for all this. But she said that he could not worry so much. Even if she has to wear cheap clothes and starve, she will be in order. The main thing is that Tan is nearby. He affectionately smiled at her back. Children always express everything they think about. He thought that it would be great to live as quietly and calmly as they had passed for the last few days. Somi joyfully said that from now on it will be. However, they did not even suspect that ill-wishers were peering from the street behind them. In the morning, rumors had already gone through the city that some palace suddenly appeared next to the lake of Donchonho, although only a week ago it was not there. These gossip have reached one important young master. His subjects reported on this. They still did not have the time and the opportunity to make sure of this. But human rumor does not subside. The master was very interested in this. Where could a wonderful palace appear there in just a couple of days? Therefore, he decided to take a walk and at the same time check how everything really is. At night, he gathered a small detachment of the accompanying and went to the lake. The warriors spoke among themselves and noticed that the master has recently dislikes a little. The fact is that recently the bandits who are engaging in the region of Honas have become increasingly attacked by villages. The Department of Righteousness and the Law requires that they are more likely to be caught. Therefore, the young master is now a lot of trouble because he is the head of this business. But even more, he is spoiled by a man named Chanpek-san. This man is the head of the gang of bandits. He has such a high level of martial arts that an ordinary warrior will not even be able to approach him. He also masterfully travels on a horse, so it is impossible to catch him, no matter how hard you try. Therefore, instead of Chanpek-san, his family members were captured, who were beheaded, and their heads were sent in bags. Because of this, a bandit led by a thirst for revenge got out of control. But the warriors were sure that very soon they would get rid of this cut, violating the peace of the emperor and his subjects. Then the master will become one careless. For almost a year, after all, it has passed since the moment when the young man was resting for the last time. Suddenly he noticed a high gate ahead. It turns out that people in the settlement did not lie at the mysterious palace in the forest. This was an unexpected discovery not only for the master, but also for his subjects. According to the conversations of the townspeople, a ghost settled in this estate. Although no one believed in these tales, it could not but alarm that the house appeared on the shore so suddenly. The master ordered one of his subjects to go inside and check everything. But at the same moment, a huge energy monster appeared behind him, which forced not only his entire detachment, but also strain him. The master immediately turned around, but there was no more monster. Before him stood an unknown master of martial arts. He was very unhappy that people without an invitation came to his territory. The gentleman asked the man a little shyly whether this palace belongs to him. From Tan came powerful energy, backed up by long years of life. Tan confirmed that the house belongs to him, and asked the interlocutor to introduce himself. The young master was called Hong Vaughn. He was the head of the Aquan. His fear retreated. Because he had nothing to fear, he arrived here as a legal representative of the interests of the empire. Von Chan asked the man whether he built this beautiful palace. He modestly replied that he did not build anything, but only repaired. But such an answer to the master did not suit. This is the state land. Here it is impossible to build something without permission. He asked if a man does not know about it. He only coldly asked the young master in response whether it was possible to just give him this permission, and not to arrange conflicts. And at that moment he threw a little rabbit at the feet of Chan. He believed that such a fee should be enough to get permission. But Chan did not approve the self-confidence of the master and ordered his servants to arrest Tan W. Tan did not really want to contact them, but he considered the opportunity to observe their orders useful. He was quickly tied with a rope, since he did not really resist. The young gentleman had already managed to taste the taste of a quick and simple victory, so he warned the Brownings that he did not intend to let him go so easily. Since he decided that he could circle the head of these lands around the finger, then let him mean that it would not get away with him. But no matter how Mr. Hong did not try to control himself, there was something frightening in the eyes of the arrested. Therefore, he wanted to deal with a man as soon as possible, and after that go to rest. However, after some time, Tang suddenly stopped. Before that, he obediently went where he was led, but then suddenly, as if in the ground have grown up. This was very angry with the servant. Has he decided to resist them? However, suddenly the one who shouted the most fell to the ground. Everyone else tensed, looking around in fright, not understanding what was the matter. Suddenly they noticed that a huge avalanche of arrows flew right on them from the sky. They struck the soldiers with a wave, digging into their bodies, because of which they fell powerlessly to the ground. From fright, the Voon fell to the ground and crawled back, away from the defeated subordinates. When he raised his eyes, he saw that the very famous gang of criminals was already in front of him. It was the same Chan Pek-san, whom the young gentleman was so afraid of, and which he had to catch. He grinned sarcastically, and said that it was reckless of Mr. Hong without any fear to lean around. Pek-san looked confident and menacing. He said with a smile that today the investigator will die. Mr. Hong crawled out even further, not imagining what he was doing against such a huge crowd of opponents. 6 months have passed since the 7 vat of Pek-san was captured and killed. Then Chan could not imagine that he himself would become the goal of the bandit. Tang, at a very bored gaze, followed what was happening and worried only that the battle would not come out too loud. After all, the child was sleeping in his house. At this time, Mr. Hong was on the verge of hysteria. Of the worthy weapons, he has only a sword, and this guy, whom he arrested, will not help, as the investigator thought. He almost resigned to his inevitable death, because he would never stand so many people. In addition, warriors led by Chan Pek-san should have outstanding skills. Moreover, they were so faithful to the boss that no less than him wanted to take revenge on the young master for his family Pek-san. Mr. Hong was trembling and prayed for mercy. Pek-san has been waiting for this moment for a very long time. Therefore, now he was pretty laughed, because I did not see a single reason why his plan could not be able to. He had long wanted to look at the investigator, distorted from fear. He grabbed him with his big palm behind his head and said that the guy would not leave alive from him. After all, today is the day of memory of the ancestors, and they need offers. On the face of Mr. Hong froze the grimace of horror. The boss threw him like a thing and gave his subjects to torture. Then Mr. Hong grabbed his last opportunity and promised the Tang of a nearby that if he helps him, then the chapter will do anything for him. Then finally the bandits drew attention to the quiet man. Pek-san looked him, trying to understand who this young man was at all. His hands were tightly connected by a rope, so the boss thought that he was a criminal captured by Hong. So he cut the rope, releasing it, and allowed him to calmly leave. If Tan really was a criminal, then he would be very lucky to get such help from criminal authority. Meanwhile, Von Chan continued to choke with tears and calling the brown-haired manner to the rescue. Tang did not think long and still asked the gang's boss to linger, although they were about to leave. This did not like this very much. Why would some guy, much lower and visually weaker than him, so brazenly contact him? The brown-haired man coldly asked Pek-san what they are going to do with the head of the city. Pek-san calmly replied that they would kill him, just as the government killed his family. Tan noted that, if you think about it, in comparison with the head of the inheritance of Pek-san killed much more people. It turns out that the young master simply tried to avenge all those who fell by the hand of the bandit. Such conclusions raised a wave of discontent among the subordinates of the gray-haired warrior. But he ordered them to shut up, and he himself asked Shaitan, did he really want to help Mr. Hong? Tan looked around and noticed that there were about 50 people in the gang. But this did not frighten him. He asked the chapter if he was ready to cooperate. The brown-haired man was ready to help with one condition. If he saves the chapter, he would no longer bring him problems and forget about his house by the lake. The bandits angered that the guys directly had such conversations right with them. Mr. Hong realized that the house of Tan was called the same palace to which they came. And of course, he agreed to such conditions, just to stay alive. Then Tan began to fulfill his part of the transaction. He stood in front of the gang and confidently told them that if they retreat, then no one would suffer. But those expectedly underestimated the power of the young man. They believed that he was not able to independently resist such a large crowd. Therefore, one of them, the most unrestrained, jumped with a sword on Tan W, thinking that he and alone would cope with this upstart. But at the same moment the brown-haired man easily threw him 10 meters back, hit him slightly. He fell to the ground unconscious, and his foam went from his mouth. Even Mr. Hong was frightened by this indescribable power of a man. But the warrior who attacked Tan W was one of the 3 best fighters in a gang. This also impressed the dignity. He thought about how only such a strong warrior was connected. The boss felt this guy on the aura that he could be even stronger than him. But a numerical advantage was still on the side of the gang, and in the amount of power. The baking of the rank in this way has come out of the battles, with opponents surpassing it many times. So this time I did not plan to retreat, and he still believed that they could deal with the arrogant young man with one blow. Therefore, he immediately ordered his gang to rush into battle. They simultaneously jumped into the air and attacked their enemy. Tang managed to even think for a moment. Is it worth losing their life? It was not difficult to kill these people. As soon as he waves his hand, the opponents will fall. However, the idea that blood would have to shed again disturbed him, and the warrior's heart was filled with doubts. He closed his eyes and created around him a huge high pillar of sand and earth that defended him and pushed off the attacked soldiers. When the fog, caused by this, scattered a little, the bake of sand saw the whole and unharmed Tan, around whom the frightened bandits crowded. Chunpek-san could not believe his own eyes. In the next instant, Tan threw a sword into the air, which he took away from one of the bandits. Then he quickly threw a stone into the blade. The wreckage of the blade scattered, destroying all the subordinates of the dignity. Now he was left without his faithful gang. An ordinary person would not even have time to understand what happened. It is terrible to imagine what Tan W is still capable of. He was different from all the masters whom the man met before. Pek-san could not even get close to him to say about revenge. At the very moment when Chunpek-san realized this, he rushed where his eyes looked. He left his fallen warriors to lie on the ground, if only to hide rather and not be killed next to them. For the first time in his life, he so shamefully ran away from the battlefield. Tan thoughtfully threw pebbles in his hand. He thought that the boss would be bolder. Suddenly, Mr. Hong attracted his attention again. He grabbed the hem of the brown fish and began to beg to catch up with the peak of the dignity and catch. Tan was a little bent that you can't finish the battle on this. We will have to catch this cowardly man who ran away to save his skin. After all, he needs to solve the case of his house. Therefore, he went into the forest, following the escaped, and in just a couple of moments he was already near him. He easily imprinted a baking of the dignity with his head in the ground, with ease of just one blows, cutting it out. And after that he returned to the young master. He sat on a branch of a low tree, and on the other two, he laid a baking of the dignity, so that it was in a disconnect, and Chana, hanging him by the neck. Tan strictly told the guy that their deal was over. Now let him not even think about standing in the way of Tan Yu, and let him make sure that no living soul will know about him. Suddenly, he remembered that Somi told him to smile during a conversation with other people, as he pushes everyone with his stone face. And he smiled to politely finish the conversation, but it turned out to be a little crooked and frightening, which forced the young master to strain even more. However, it worked partly. Now he will definitely do everything as Tan said, so as not to get into trouble. A few days have passed since that moment. Somi and Tan got out for a walk in the province of Hunan. While they walked around the Akiana market, Somi heard people's conversations that finally those robbers who wandered around the district caught. From this, it even became calmer. Tan asked the girl, was she really afraid of these bandits, even though he is next to her? She admitted that she was really afraid of a little, but now they were caught, so there was nothing to worry about. Suddenly, a wonderful aroma that came from some kind of trading stall distracted her. Tang at the same time thought that the mountain bandits that they were hunting in the district caught, and the man who came to his threshold disappeared. Now they needed to focus on how to equip their own lives and not worry about safety. The market was full of an abundance of all sorts of different goods, including all kinds of dishes. Somi looked at everything that caught her eye with admiration. But Tan could not afford to buy all this. He did not notice how his money ended. Money is the most necessary when you grow children, so he urgently needs to figure out where you could earn them. When the Tan had one bed, any surface on which one could lie down became. When he wanted to eat, he went hunting. That was his life. Therefore, he completely had no idea what to do to earn. But if he took responsibility for the life of Somi, he will need a lot of money. It is a pity that he thought about it so late. Now he could not afford to hesitate in this matter. After a walk in the market, they went home. But on the way, Somi for some reason stopped the elder and asked to wait. He suddenly began to actively dig something in the ground. Tan asked what was found on her. Then Somi pointed to a small flower and said that she wanted to take him home. Tan was not against it, but he wondered if the girl could handle it on her own. He sat pretty tightly in the ground. But the youngest was sure that it was strong enough to pull it out. Then she grabbed the stem and began to pull it so diligently from the ground that even the cheeks turned red. Meanwhile, the brown-haired man was interested in something else. Around the flower there were strange traces that did not belong to them. In addition, there is not a single weed around the flower. Has someone specially put him here? Suddenly, Somi still managed to tear out a poor plant with a root. And it turned out that some unusual small bag was planted along with the flower. Somi decided to open it as she became interested in what was inside. But suddenly, it is not clear where the unfamiliar guy jumped out and ordered her to put the bag in place. He was so angry that he attacked a child with a dagger. But the blade did not have time to injure her, since Tan immediately ran up and grabbed the young man by the wrist. The knife flew out of the hands of the attacker. "Who are you?" asked him Tan Yu, although the guy himself would not mind finding out what kind of people were pushing his property. He tried to break out, but his hands seemed to pierce electric shock, and the man rudely threw him away from his child. Yes, so much that when landing, he pierced the earth under him. Frightened by a sudden conflict, Kumi even lost consciousness, because of which the level of anger inside a man increased to an incredible level. He was not worried about the attack on himself, but would not allow anyone to offend the child. If the guy harmed Somi, then the under-therapy would no longer live. But, it seems, the guy wanted to just scare her. Therefore, Tan took a deep breath and pulled himself together. What is it in that bag that the guy was so nervous? As expected, a gold jewel was inside. Then Tang raised both unconscious children in his arms and carried home. This thief, obviously, may come in handy. The night came. The young thief woke up in frank horror because he could not remember what happened to him and why he ended up in an unfamiliar house. So the whole body also broke from a recent fight. But everything fell into place when, noting that the guy woke up in the room, Tan Yu. Instead of greeting or at least some explanation, the man introduced himself. The thieves tensed even more, because one glance at the Tan was enough to feel his ominous energy. Tan suddenly admitted that he wanted to kill the guy when he attacked Somi, but changed his mind. A thief, in a trembling voice, asked him about the reason. He veiledly said that the life of every person has a price, and he asked if the brown-haired man knew how much it costs. He suggested that about 1,000,000 nannies. But Tan said that this is too much. In the best case, the little boy would have walked over the thief, so it is worth thinking well before giving at least one nanny for his life. But he decides how much his life costs, and apparently pretty confident in myself. Therefore, for the fact that he survived, the young man is now obliged to pay Tan from 1,000,000 nannies, and the same amount for an attempt to kill Somi. And in all, he now owe a man 5,000,000 nannies. This is the amount that he will have to pay if he wants to live. Meanwhile, in the State Palace, Wan Chan received honors with might and main. The courtiers thanked Mr. Hong for allegedly he caught a baking of san, which rapidly increased his reputation. He behaved confidently enough in public, but alone could not control his emotions. He was very worried that now people look at him differently. This should be expected, because he caught a dangerous bandit. But now they will demand more from him. He began to praise him exaggeratedly, like a folk hero. Even in the detective department, they began to treat him with great confidence, and therefore they instructed to investigate the case of the disappearance of the golden statue of the Buddha. This case is clearly the hands of a criminal with outstanding skills. He could not abandon this task, because people were absolutely confident in his abilities. If he cannot cope, he can't see him either respect or work. But the matter was so difficult. If the statue was stolen, then it will be hidden to the very end. At this time, the thief's head burst from the strange logic of the man that he kept him hostage. If he owes 1,000,000 for himself, and another for the baby, where did the debt of 5,000,000 come from? In addition, although he earned a living by theft of jewelry, he had never held even 1,000,000 nannies in his hands. He admitted to Tan that now he did not have that kind of money, but in the future he would definitely give everything. He knelt down and prayed a man about mercy, promising that he would do everything that they would ask him about. The thieves can do so: cleaning, washing, housekeeping. Therefore it can be useful in many ways. Tang's gaze did not inspire confidence in the young man that this could work. But he continued to list his skills, and, as one of him, called the ability to cook. Remembering that neither he nor the Somi can prepare, Tang nevertheless agreed to this condition. Therefore, he said that from now on the brown-haired man would be as a housekeeper until he pays a conditioned amount. Since then, the whole week has passed since the guy became the slave of Tan W. It turns out that his name was Chan himself, Tai. He was clearly not pleased that he had to dig on a man around the clock. But if Somi had not found his cash, there would be none of this. Be that as it may, Tai himself could not sit, fold. There was almost no time left. In fact, the same statue of the Buddha that Mr. Hong was looking for the same statue of Buddha. It is necessary to return it to the place before the customer arrives. But for now, he obediently coped with home responsibilities and prepared a luxurious dinner for Somi and Tan. They were satisfied, and especially the catfish. Tan even said that he was ready to pay the guy a salary for his work, so he will be able to pay the debt. That's just disappointed Tay himself by the fact that he was ready to allocate only 3 nannies per day for his salary. At this pace, he will pay these millions for life, but the thief was not going to stay here for so long. He had already found a place where Tan hid the statue. Now it remains only to wait for the right case to steal it and escape. Tani and Somi finished dinner, and the elder was in a good mood. But Tae himself was still loaded again, and after lunch he had to do washing and cleaning. Who would have thought that he, a great robber who circled the investigation around the finger, would be someone's servant? I also got so ridiculous like some small thief. My dishes, he could not stop thinking about the escape plan. He is only a week here, but he was already tired of hunching this monster. A week and 3 days passed. The merchant should already have arrived in the city and wait for him. If he is late, he is the end. Although there is a possibility that if he remains in this god of a forgotten estate, they will not be able to catch him. The care of the employer reassured a little, but he did not want to live locked up here. While Tae himself was thinking about all this, Tanny and Somi were about to go fishing, and they decided to leave the shuttle to look after the house. The chance of escape turned to him very unexpectedly. Tae himself made the most courteous smile that he was capable of, and promised that the house was in safe hands. Tang at all the same, before leaving, reminded that if the slave tries to escape, he will double the amount of debt. And even if he doesn't think that Tang will not be able to find him later. After that, they finally left. Brave fun. They reached the lake, from which they were going to fish. Having settled on the shore, Somi asked why his uncle decided to go here. They still have a lot of food at home. He thoughtfully drew something on earth and said that there is no need to think about it. He drew around the girl a circle with a stick on the ground and said that let her fish, and for now, he needs to move away on business. The baby quickly realized that the circle was drawn so that she would not go beyond it and would not be lost. Tan also put a barrier on her so that neither animals nor people could see the baby in a circle. And he promised to return soon, asking the girl to catch as much fish as possible. And he went to Mr. Hong, who continued to kill grief. He was expectedly surprised and frightened by the sudden appearance of Tan Yu. But he reassured him and said that he had come with one curious businessman and invited Hong to join the plan. Meanwhile, Tae himself had already carried his feet out of his house with might and main. He pulled a statuette from a cache and brought her to a meeting with a merchant. He promised to give her 2 million nannies, but no more, since it would be too difficult to sell. Tae himself agreed to this amount. It was fairly fair. In general, the merchant pleasantly surprised this offer. Tae himself was able to crank up such a difficult business and even survived. He gave the thief the money and warned him to be careful. After all, more recently, the department caught the famous criminal Pek-san. He was the strongest robber who operated in the Kona area. Rumor has it that thanks to this case, the head of the district can be sent to the capital. Tae himself thanked the merchant for the information and proudly stated that he had nothing to fear. Suddenly, the clatter of more than one pair of legs was heard outside the bench. Suddenly, subordinates of the merchant rushed into the room. They looked extremely frightened. They have serious problems. The detectives of the department arrived here. There were so many of them that it is almost impossible to escape. They completely from the perimeter. Someone passed their whereabouts. Tae himself, realizing that the case smells of palinus, decided to quickly retire through the window. At the same time, taking a bag of money with him, he skillfully jumped out of the window and gave Daru, slipping past the ministers of the law. And detectives were already bursting into the shop. They grabbed and tied all the workers that were inside. And at the head of the detachment, none other than Mr. Hong Wan-chan stood. He went to the merchant's table and saw on him the very statue that he was looking for. All who were inside were immediately arrested. The merchant asked the investigators to admit, who made a denunciation on them to take revenge on the enemy. But they did not say anything. Yes, and there is no need, because it is at least awaiting many years of imprisonment in prison. And at the maximum, the death penalty. Only this is impossible to close this. They also need to catch a guy who stole this figurine from the detective department. If the Hong does this and returns the figure back, then he will be able to get not only the trust of the department, but also the emperor himself. It is not sacred that he arrived in this Tan's tip shop, which predicted that Tae himself would use the moment to escape and sell the figurine. The man's designation was a little strained, Chan, but nevertheless he followed his instructions and arrived at the crime scene. Tae himself at this time was already far from the shop. He wanted to take refuge in the forest, but a whole crowd of detectives from the department got behind him. They were incredibly persistent and did not lag behind him a single step, but the guy could not give up to them. If he is caught, they will surely torture and chop him into small pieces. Then one idea came into his head. He got to a deep cliff that he was in the very depths of the forest and jumped right into it, deftly going down the rocky slope. Investigators almost caught him, but could not follow him into a cliff, because without careful preparation, it was extremely dangerous to go down it. Therefore, the guy managed to break away from the chase. That's just another unexpected problem was waiting for him below. There he was already waiting for Tan Yu. The young man bounced off him in horror, not understanding how he could find him here. Tan grinned sarcastically. With his abilities, he could track anyone. But Tay himself was not going to give up so easy. He grabbed a bag of money and jumped even deeper into a cliff. It is impossible to grab him. The guy naively thought that then Tang could not catch him. But again he underestimated the man. A new plan loomed in his head. As soon as his legs touch the earth, he will be away from the spirit and will be able to tear himself away from the pursuer. But while he flew down from the slope, Tan had already managed to go down and again waited for him below. Therefore, when Tay himself flew, the brown-haired man easily grabbed his leg, catching him even before landing. He smiled at the youngest, but it came out more terribly with him. So he also mocked the unsuccessful thief, saying that it was necessary to carefully go down from the cliff. Tay himself again broke out of his grip and did not leave his attempts to hide. But wherever he went, Tan found him everywhere. It was as if he were teleporting after him, leaving the poor young man of the slightest chance of escape. Ultimately, Tay himself fell powerlessly to the ground and finally gave up. But now, his duty of the Tan's duty has doubled, up to 10 million nannies. Enraged, Tay himself, overwhelmed with anger and disappointment, tried to hit the man in the face, but he easily dodged. So he also took his bag of money from the young man. It turns out that the debt is now covered with only 2 million, and it remained to work out 8 more. So Tay himself continued to live and work in the house of the great master. While he did not like Somi due to the fact that through her fault he ended up in this house, the girl, on the contrary, always watched his work with admiration. After an unsuccessful escape, Tan began to use Te himself for even more brazenly for any homework for the unfortunate 3 nannies per day. And all this money goes to compensation for debt. Tay himself finally abandoned the idea of hiding. After unsuccessful attempts to escape, he was only beaten repeatedly, but never succeeded. Having finished with cleaning, the guy was about to go shopping. Though wandering through the forest, he cursed to himself how far from the city the palace was located. And then he suddenly noticed that he had a small pursuer. Although Somi tried not to catch the eye, he went up to her and asked why she was pursuing him. The girl looked at him with her large, innocent eyes. He sternly said that the girl needs to return home and not follow him. After all, if something happens to her, they will kill him in place. Then she hugged the guy and honestly admitted that she did not want to cause inconvenience. She was just scared to remain alone. Tay himself recalled that he goes to the market for groceries, and it will be inconvenient for him to carry her with him throughout the area. She sniffed gloomily and promised that she would not leave the guy a single step if he agreed to take her with him. Tay himself did not want to go to her at all, but he could not send the child alone through the forest full of wild animals. Tan was on the hunt, so leaving the baby one was very unsafe. Then he gave up, grabbed the girl in his arms, and put him on his neck. So they wandered together and wandered into the city through the forest, wagging between the paths and avoiding wild animals, which was teeming with the forest. Somi looked at everything around with interest, while Tay himself was very restrained. Although he was still not enthusiastic about this idea, the company of the child was not as unpleasant as he expected. Soon they reached the main market square of the city. To the surprise of Tay himself, in the market there were unusually many dubious personalities and believed. Previously, the order was monitored by the merchant to whom he tried to sell the statue. But, since he was seized, there were less order and more dirt, dangers on the market. The man must have already been demolished. The theft of the figurine from the detective department is a serious crime. So, to some extent, Tay himself was even lucky that he did not have to be responsible for this incident. Deeply immersed in his thoughts, the guy did not even notice how someone crept up to them from behind. A huge bandit tore the girl from the young man's shoulders and set off to run away. For a moment, the guy disappeared from under his feet for a moment. He immediately rushed to run after Gromila, who stole a child from him. But the thief not only was physically strong and had a good speed, but he also used the scurvy technique for more speed movement. This was not enough. The chase dragged on so much that the thief managed to run to the forest. But Tay himself did not lag behind him, no matter how hard it was. Only after a while it seemed to him that the thief did not just run away from him, but specially lures somewhere. While the child is at the thieves, Mr. Tan will definitely come here to save the cub. But after he dealt with the athletic guys, he will take on Tay himself. Therefore, you need to catch up with him by all means, and pick up the catfish before they fall into the trap. Tay himself also knew the technique of scurvy, so he took advantage of her to catch up with a man. And in the blink of an eye, he was already very close to him. He grabbed the man by the shoulder and demanded that he be returned to the child. He only grinned maliciously and advised the guy to look around. He did not notice at all how he was surrounded by a whole huge detachment of bandits. Still, he fell into a trap. When Tang returned home, he could not but be surprised that he was empty. Previously, silence was perceived by him as something ordinary because he always lived alone. but now he began to get used to the constant turmoil and noise around. He guessed that Somi, apparently, had gone with Chante himself for shopping. But I thought that now in the market it was very restless, and was going to go there too to check if everything is in order with the cohabitants. And he was not in vain worried, because the gang of robbers at that time had already beaten the copper Tay's feet. He hugged his Somi tightly and pressed her to him, covering the girl from blows with his body. After some time, the bandits began to enrage that Tay himself was so hardy and withstanding all their blows. They thought that it would be good to take the girl and torture her in front of Tay himself in order to cause him even more pain. But Tay himself was ready to protect the child, even at the cost of his own life. Looking at Somi that was lying on the ground under him, memories of the past involuntarily surged on the brown. A moment associated with his younger sister, who occurred 12 years ago, surfaced in his thoughts. They then lived in an old abandoned house, survived as they could. Tay himself stole all sorts of things to feed himself, and that day he turned out to be a rather large catch than he boasted his sister. She asked him if it was dangerous to steal so many things, but he asked the baby not to worry about it. Their parents were gone when they were still small, so from childhood, Tay himself took responsibility to take care of the younger sister. She often and was very sick, so he did all the work, and his sister asked only to remain strong and fight his illness. Somehow he even stole a luxurious robe for the girl. He pulled him with one merchant on the street. Although it was a great sister, it was good quality. Only the merchant looked like a rather dangerous person. Therefore, Tay himself asked his sister not to wear this dress for at least a couple of months until it became safe. It was only necessary to wait a bit until the man leaves the city. The sister was capricious, said that she wanted to dress him now, but Tay himself, understanding the risks, hid the dress so that the youngest would not get him. However, that day, the girl did not return home. Tay himself searched the whole city to find it. She was in a little lane where there was not a soul. The baby found an outfit that he hid and went out into the street. She was not lucky to catch the eye of the people of that very rich master who took the dress, and the girl was beaten to death. Since then, Tay himself has a hatred of children. After all, they never listen to what they say. As it turned out, people who attacked Tay himself were subordinates to the merchant, who was executed due to the fault of the young man, and they are ready to go to everything to take revenge on their boss. One of the bandits took Somi from Tay himself. She tried to break out, but the grip was too strong. As soon as he finds the strength to move in himself, Tay himself ordered the robbers to release the girl and not to torment her. But the angry bandit only kicked the guy with his foot on the face and ordered to be silent. Somi screeched scaredly, worried about the elder, and then it painfully bit the robber that held her by the hand. He expectedly cried out and pulled his hand, dropping the girl to the ground. She immediately rose to her feet and stood in front of the gang, confidently closing the elder. The disobedience of the baby led the robber, and he exposed his sword. Tay himself, that there was strength, screamed and ordered Somi to run, and not to create nonsense, and not try to protect him. But she stood for her own and did not even move. Tay himself froze in the eyes. He remembered how his sister looked when she was killed. He did not want to allow something to happen to Somi, but the girl continued to cover him with herself, wide open her hands. She did not want to leave him alone. And at that moment the bandit swung at the child, and his face was distorted in an angry grimace. But suddenly he felt that someone was holding his hand. It was Tang Yu, who incredibly arrived at the aid in time. He easily, contemptuously threw Gramila to the side. The brown eyes burned with murderous fire. Living robbers can no longer leave here. All that was next, Tay himself did not remember. He fainted. Through a dream, he thought. Maybe what happened to his sister happened due to the fact that she did not like to sit alone and wait for him in an old, dilapidated house. When he finally came to his senses and opened his eyes, he saw a catfish in front of him, lively and unharmed. He jumped on the bed. The remnants of sleep immediately evaporated. All that worried him was all right with the girl. He grabbed her face with his palms and asked why she then intervened. She just had to run away and not try to protect him. But instead of an answer, Somi asked how Tay himself feels. He really got it from those bandits. The next day, after a skirmish with a gang, Somi took care of Tay himself, and he lay in bed and rested. Gradually, the memories of what happened before he fainted. Tan had just appeared in the clearing at the right time and ordered the guy to take the child and leave with her home. Despite the fact that Tay himself was badly damaged, he was able to rise and run away because of the fear of death. But after that, his memories are interrupted. Discussing with Somi the events, Tay himself asked her not to act so thoughtlessly and interfere in fights. Her life is more important than the life of another person, but the girl categorically did not agree with him. Moreover, she would have done so again if she had to. and not a drop would regret, because she does not want to lose her family for the second time. She knows that Tae himself thought only about escaping Day. But Somi is not like that. She seriously looked at him and promised that she would become the strongest and protect him and Tan, if she would be needed. Therefore, she asked him not to say such a nonsense anymore, and not to neglect his life too. At night of the day when the fight occurred, information about the battle among the forest reached the statement. Therefore, Mr. Hong had to go to the scene to find out what happened. In addition, the department received a strange report related to this case. For all victims, the left side of the face is strongly pressed. There Chan struck when he heard about it. Only a person of incredible power could do this, and he immediately thought about Tang Yu, the very powerful monster whom he met in the forest. When they arrived at the place, the man was still there. The investigators were about to intervene, grab Tan W, but Mr. Hong stopped them in time. He went to the man, as if to an old acquaintance, and asked him what was happening here. Tang had explained that this gang is the henchmen of the merchant, whom the investigator caught last time. They stole a man and were going to kill him, but Tang intervened in time. Most have already died at the hands of a man, and those who still survived, Mr. Hong ordered to arrest. The subordinates immediately began to execute the order, but they were surprised that Mr. Hong himself, who, as they thought, caught a baking of Sana alone, retires in front of some unknown master. Meanwhile, Tan asked a friend of his friend whether he knew anything about the gang, who calls himself Black Blades. He definitely heard about them somewhere. Black Blades are one of the many groups industry in Median lands. Its feature is that the gang consists of ragged and fugitive criminals, who, with the help of their outstanding skills, do atrocities. Over the past few years, they have delivered many problems to the powerful. Tang had said that the executed merchant and his guys are puppets of Black Blades. They say that their Konoma base is located in the city of Henson. Tan said that he and these guys have one unfinished business and asked whether Mr. Hong was against helping him. The next day, one of the heads of Black Blades in Henson was in a disgusting mood. His name was Yak Hakasan. He was just the news that their merchant was caught by the ministers of the law. The most gifted were sent to this case, and Hiksan believed that they simply could not fail. But the opponents were stronger than he could imagine. He would love to turn his neck to that thief, because of which their merchant was executed. How a terrible noise was heard here, and the wall of the hall broke. The beams and pieces of the wall flew in different directions. She was broken by Tan Yu. The servant of the head of the Black Blades scaredly bounced to the side, not raising what was happening. The golden eyes of a man sparkled dangerously. Tang had enough minutes to beat the Yak Hak-san and throw him at the feet of the investigators. They immediately took up his arrest. But suddenly, Tan's eyes fell on brilliant coins that spilled out from a man from behind the bosom. He remembered that he had 2 non-abrasive children at home, and the money gradually ended. Then he bent to the leader of the gang and took these coins. He has the right to get some money for his work. In addition, he took a whole lot of precious things that he could find at the headquarters of the leader of the bandits. This was a little embarrassed by investigators, but they did not dare to say anything against it. Therefore, they only bowed to the master and thanked him for his help in the detention of the criminal. So Hen managed to collect a whole bunch of money in order to take care of Somi and Chantai himself. 3 months have passed since then. Summer has come. Thanks to the values obtained from black daggers, they lived in abundance and abundance. But one small problem arose. There was even too much money, so they ceased to somehow deny themselves food. Because of what Somi himself and Tae himself are uncontrolled. In fact, the origins of this problem were covered in Tang himself at the Hen. He bought an immense amount of food for them. Every day they had a dense 3-time nutrition, and here's the result. Since both of them had to starve in life, they could not eat in any way. In addition, culinary abilities themselves were really on top. In such conditions, it is simply impossible to stay in shape. But it was necessary to stop all this. If Somi himself continues to eat like that, this can harm their health. Therefore, Tan seriously decided to deal with this problem. He called them both to him and announced that he now intends to start teaching TE martial arts himself. At the same time, the Kami is also teaching the basics. Therefore, for starters, he ordered them to go to the market together and buy books on martial arts. Tae himself dared to argue and say that the books on the market are a junk that is not good. But Tan did not want to listen and insisted on his instructions. They are not perfect, but just suitable for the level of beginner masters. Therefore, Tae and Somi himself had to go to the market, where they bought all the manuals that they only found. Having looked through the first book that came across his eyes, Tan read from it notes about Tai Chi's fist and Tai Ji's sword. These were the foundations of exercises that practice shamans in 9 great schools. From this, Tani decided to start their training. Both students enthusiastically set to work. But soon, performing exercises, they were very tired, because it was problematic to move a lot about excess weight for them. They also tried to repeat everything as it was described and painted in the book. But they did not work out well due to the fact that the weight limited them in movements. Then Tong said that it is not enough just to repeat everything that is written in the book. He said that initially there was no true path along which a warrior should pass in order to master martial art. People independently invented combat equipment and then recorded information about them on paper so as not to go astray from the intended path. Therefore, he said that in fact students can move a sever, so they can find their own path. Inspired by this idea, they continued training, and in the evening, completely exhausted, Tae himself turned out to be less stable, and Kumi until the last continued to wave a stick and try different poses, while following the direction of the wind. Tang was pretty laughed, praising the girl, and said that she definitely has the makings of a martial artist. In fact, originally, Tan had no intention to teach Kami. He just wanted her to begin to move more to stay healthy. She will not become a master so quickly, but if she continues to move a lot, she will return to his former form very soon. However, Tang was not happy for a long time. After good training, these both again set to go for food, because after playing sports, they were very hungry. But the master soon limited them to food. In the end, thanks to difficult training, they safely returned to their usual weight. The main leader of the Black Blades, Sama Chan, was in a disgusting mood. Things in their gang went all the same too badly. One by one, they caught the most successful participants, who every year brought fabulous amounts of money to the gang. The last straw of patience of the commander was the news that they had lost contact with the base in Honam and the group, which was sent to Tae himself. There are still no problems in Honam. This is a fairly powerful region with an ideal location for further movements. In addition, thanks to Chanpek-san, they could easily cope with everyone who wanted to go against them. You do not need to be a genius to understand that someone appeared in the city who prevents the gang from making their plans. The servants of the head promised to take appropriate measures. They set themselves the goal of dealing with the head of the Hong County and that guy Chanpek-san, who fooled the merchant with Chu Ema. Samachan ordered to catch these two and torture. At the same time, the life of the Tan was its turn, but even so, he already felt that some unpleasant series of events was coming. Tae himself continued his classes of martial arts, and every day he was incredibly tired, because in addition to studying he also continued to do household chores. Having finished the morning lesson, he needed to wake up a catfish and feed the girl with breakfast. The request was categorically refused to rest. Not only Tae himself, but Somi continued to study a lot from the elder in their house. The girl did not have to wake up, she already woke up. Therefore, Tang found her in the forest next to the house and called for breakfast. She immediately got up and ran joyfully to the elder, hugging him. In the afternoon, when Somi and Tae himself were controlled in the kitchen, Tan shared his observations with them. The wind today behaves very strangely. Tae himself did not immediately understand what the mentor was drowning to. Then Tang ordered the guy to go to the city and check if something happened, because he had a bad foreboding. The guy began to dismiss and put off the task for later, but the strict look of the elder forced him to hurry. Therefore, the brown-haired man immediately rushed into the city. A representative of the Viker detachment in Black Blades arrived in the Akian, the province of Hone. His name was Pan Chugok. First of all, he had lunch tightly. Then subordinates asked him that tomorrow, the head of the district Hong was transporting Chanpek-san and his people to the imperial palace. It seemed strange to him that Pek-san was kept in Akian for 3 months, so it is not surprising that they finally decided to transport him. Perhaps the head of the district Hong tried torture to get information from the baking of San, but Black Blades simply do not break. However, this will cause them a lot of problems if it is transported to the palace. The palace guard cannot be compared with onlookers under the command of the head of the district. One of two. They need to either save him or kill him in order to get rid of evidence. Judging by the size of the department and the situation around, the likelihood of the success of the salvation of Pek-san is less than 40%. Therefore, Pan Chugoke ordered his people to kill Pek-shan and Oblast Traces. There is nothing complicated to deal with an already caught person. It remains only to solve the problem with this freak Chan Tae himself and the head of Hong. And there is also a hermit that caused this mess. Having finished dinner, Chugok was surprised to find that on the threshold of the taverns in which he ate, a familiar person stood painfully. It was the very Tai himself which he had to catch. Chugoke guessed that Tae himself knew who exactly was hiding in the forest and confusing the cards to their gang. Noticing that the guy begins to leave, he, without hesitation, followed him. It was difficult to make his way through the crowd, but he confidently moved forward. But as soon as he lagged behind just a split second, Tae himself turned into a deserted lane and disappeared. The guy cleverly slipped from under his nose and returned home to tell Tan W. He shared that a strange atmosphere reigned in the city, and at the end, some guy began to pursue him. He was afraid that Black Blades would not leave him alone. Then Tan asked the guy to tell him more in more detail what the gang of Blades was doing. They say that Black Blades appeared about 50 years ago, but who was their founder is unknown. Nobody found anything about this person. But there were rumors that after the victory of 9 great schools, one of the immigrants of the demonic cult founded this organization. But these were just rumors. It turns out that there is no reliable information. However, their leader must be really an outstanding person, given how cleverly he managed to gather strength in order to confront his rivals. Tan suggested that the sharp appearance of Blades was a problem for great schools, because for them there is nothing more dangerous than a threat to calm and stability. Tae himself confirmed. In the end, the Alliance Murim also had to intervene under the pressure of great schools and those who were hiding from them and are now members of Black Blades. It is known that the Alliance Murim was based from key figures of true schools. If the leader of the Black Blades managed to hide from them, then he should be a rather sensible guy. Previously, nothing of the kind could have happened. But now, even though this is the same Murim, he has become very calm. In the days of youth, Tan Y, if Paul rumors about the formation of the unification of some ragged people, they would be immediately stopped. Then there were too many those who just wanted to show their strength, for no reason. If you look from this side, the current meme is so serene that it is even boring. Tae himself asked the mentor what to do now. Probably the head of Hong is now hard, and Tae himself was right. There Chan was already caught and tortured, since he was not as dexterous as Tae and Tan W. A tide-doused young man was kneeling in front of Pan Chugokom. Chugoke did not even appear, the investigator, and so knew who fell into his hands. He suspected that Black Blades would do something else during the transportation of Pek Shan, but did not expect that they would begin to act so soon. Chugoke admitted that he could not understand. Everyone around said that it was Chan who caught Chan Pek San and that merchant. But how could such a wimp as the head of the district deal with them? Pan Chugok was sure that someone was standing for the investigator and wanted him to call him a name. Von Chan understood that the guy hinted at Tang W, but was not going to give him data about the man. Then the robber threatened the fact that he would apply gross power. Despite this, Mr. Hong still said that he did not know anything. He knew that probably for this they would kill him. However, he promised to take this secret to the grave with him, and a real man cannot break his word. The stubbornness of the bandit was not impressed. Hong Von looks quite impressive outside, but he is weak spiritually and does not own martial arts. The pain shock from torture will quickly kill him, as the robber thought. Therefore, he knelt down in front of the guy and showed him a small bag. He invited Hong to guess what was inside. He said nothing, and then the robber opened it. Inside was some white powder, which he sprayed on the face of the investigator. It was a powder of truth. For all this, from his hiding place on the ceiling all this time, Tae himself, who tracked down the gang. What was happening greatly forced him to be nervous. If the Hong is now dashing and dies here, then it is still more complicated. Tang, before sending the youngest to survive, told him that Mr. Hong needs to be protected. He will still be useful to them. Tae himself did not understand why they should generally worry about the life of some kind of bastard from the government. But the word Tan Y is the law. No matter how Tae himself did not want to but interfere in the conflict, he is obliged to save Mr. Hong, as a mentor ordered him. Although he did not have an exact plan of action, the guy decided to act. Therefore, he instantly went down from his shelter and ran to the wounded Hong. The guy is desperately, and due to recognize, arrogantly rushed into battle. The only thing he is capable of, suddenly attack, so it was necessary to use this. After discouraging the enemies with his sudden blow, Tae himself won a little time for himself, grabbed the investigator, and rushed away. Chugoke only looked boredly after him and ordered his people to go in pursuit. As soon as Tae himself ran out, he immediately noticed that he couldn't get away very much. The bandits were already catching up. He ran away from them, barely managing to maintain a distance, and constantly prayed for Tang to quickly come to his aid. And the man was already here as here. He exposed his sword and took a deep breath, reveling in the lunar rays on his face. It's time to act. For some time during the pursuit, Mr. Hong lost consciousness, and when he woke up, he found that he was lying on a wide branch of a tree, and Tae himself covers his mouth so that the guy would not make noise. Below on the ground there were bandits who were looking for them. Since Mr. Hong saw the guy for the first time in his life, he asked him who he was. Tae himself explained to him that he was the subordinate of Mr. Tan. Then Mr. Hong shone. He was glad that this man saved him again, and is insanely grateful. Tae himself smiled mentally, thinking that it was good to have his own man in the government. But if they want to use it, then for this you must first get out of this place alive. There was a suspicion that the bandits would pursue them until they themselves could stand on their feet. Therefore, Tae himself warned Chan that the chase would be long. And right at that moment, the Black Blades just noticed the runners on the tree. Tae himself instantly grabbed the investigator in his arms and again rushed to run away. He fled from them for a long time, not sparing his legs. But no matter how hard he was, he soon completely exhausted. Therefore, he threw Mr. Hong on the ground and decided that since he could no longer run away, we must try to stand up for himself in his fists. Chu Gokei ordered the bandits to immediately start an attack, and they attacked the poor guy. But they didn't have time to do anything when suddenly they were defeated. The whole body pierced unbearable pain and they scattered in different directions. It was showed by Tan Wai and chopped opponents to the right and left with his sword, leaving them the slightest chance of survival. One moment, and the bandits did not even have time to notice how their body was already cut in half with a sharp blade. The god of martial arts. Chu Gok knew that there was only one person in the history of Median lands who received this title. It was neither San Fan, who created a blow and reached immortality, not Daimo, who laid the foundation for the martial arts of Shaolin, neither a heavenly demon, who founded a demonic cult and reached unprecedented heights, could not get this title. However, they were definitely the strongest masters of their era, but only the god of martial arts never lost. That is why he became a legend. Chu Gokei was not sure that the great master stood in front of him, but his body was constrained by a wave of horror. Tae himself pointed a finger at the bandits and said Tanny that they were to blame for everything. Frightened by the majesty of the master, the robbers, as if small children, scaredly stepped back a step. Tan asked them if they are members of Black Blades. The knees of Chu Goka were already trembling. Although he tried to pretend that he was not afraid, it turned out badly. He was surprised and scared by the fact that Tan looked so confident and was ready to join them, even knowing which gang they belonged to. Tan literally burned his gaze, overthrowing with sparks from his eyes. Why he began to sweat in tension and could not budge. Tae himself and Mr. Hong only admiredly watched this, sitting aside. Tang, without much effort, dealt with the bandits one by one, and only the blade of his sword was shimmered in the dark under the moonlight. Tae himself did not deny that the master was a great warrior, but he treated this no longer with admiration, like Chan, but with apprehension. He considered Tan a real monster. He was surprised that the guy had the courage to insult his master, but for Tae himself this was not a problem. If he wanted, he could say nasty things even about the emperor. He still does not hear them. Against this background they had a dispute. Tae himself did not like that he was called rude, and Hong, that the guy insults Tan Yu. They almost fought, pushing each other, and constantly clutching the words. But they were stopped by Tan Wai, who just finished the showdown. Graduating Chugoka by the scruff of the scruff, Tan suggested the guys to return home. The next day, in the morning, the administration turned upside down. Most prisoners were killed, and those who managed to survive were found in such a state that no one would surprise anyone if they died soon. At the same time, the head of the district simply disappeared without any trace of invasion of his peace. As a result, a military search detachment was sent to his wanted list, and in Akiana, universal concern was rummaged. Among the people there was talk that this was again the work of Black Blades, and if this is so, then, as it seemed to them, the head of the district is definitely not to do. Nevertheless, people loved Mr. Hong and admired him for the fact that he, although he knew that the Blades could do with him, he still decided to take a chance to punish them. Therefore, many joined the search group to help find the traces of the young man. They refused to believe that these damn Blades managed to kill such a great man. It's difficult to even think about it without tears. But although they did not know this, their experiences were in vain. Mr. Hong at that time was safe in the house of Tan Yu. There he first met Somi and immediately thought that she was like a daughter Tan Wai, although they were not very similar. Somi was a little shy, but introduced herself to the new uncle. The guy tried to be friendly and also said that he, it turns out, has a son of the same age as Somi. He could introduce children and perhaps they can even become friends. Somi was very interested in it, and Hong thought to himself that it would be great if such a cutie became his daughter-in-law. In the morning after the defeat to the head of the Black Blades, the detachment had reached the fact that all the prisoners were dead. But the detachment sent to the task, and the head of the district disappeared, so they realized that Pan Chu Gok failed his task. Black Blades searched all the surroundings, but did not find anything specific. which would indicate what happened in the forest. Then the head asked what the probability is that his people are dead. The servants tried to assure him that the probability is quite small, but the head could not believe it. The detachment should have already returned. Were they really killed by that mysterious hermit? In the latest messages that they received, nothing was said about this. But the servant said that if this mysterious master really exists, then it is highly likely that they failed the mission to capture the head of the district and kill the prisoners. The chapter had such a feeling that recently everything has been awake. From the very beginning, he had a bad foreboding about all this. The servant said that they would take up the formation of the group. He asked to take those who would not talk. Let them send people with experience for a search of Honam. Meanwhile, Tan ordered Tae himself to engage in the protection of the palace, and make sure that the caught bandits, whom he did not kill, do not run away. And Mr. Hong ordered to return to the Akyan, to gather detectives and go to Mount Tianji in 3 days. Panchu Goki said that there is the main base of Black Blades. Tang will also personally go there to deal with this barbaric group, which poisons the whole city. This caused excitement among the guys, but Tan told them that he should not worry about him. Better worry about their small power, and he advised them to engage in training in order to get less into such situations from which Tan has to save them. They were a little offended, but understood that the master was right. After this conversation, Tan went to take a walk through the forest. It's pretty cool to go after all the time spent in the house. As a child, he was used to leaning alone in such places, and he was engaged only in the development of combat skills. Now, after many years, he did not understand why only in his youth he was so focused on force. After all, in life there are so many interesting things. Suddenly someone called him, tearing off from thought. He was made by some gang of forest robbers who intended to rob him. Tan calmly replied that he had nothing with himself, but they did not believe and decided to search him anyway. But they didn't even have time to take a step towards, as they heard an annoyed female voice behind him. A girl appeared on the horizon who was extremely unhappy that the robbers constantly arrange riots in the forest. She shamed them for the fact that they decided to attack a whole crowd on one single guy. It was a Namagun of the Plow. The Namgun family from the Alliance Muram is one of the 8 great families. The robbers really did not scare her appearance. They did not even know who she was and why it was interfering. Does she really want to fight with them? Alone? And she really asked for them, preparing her sword for the duel. She was just enough to swing and slightly injure one of the robbers, as all of them immediately scattered in fear in different directions. The girl landed gallantly, pleased that he did not even have to strain. She smiled at Tan Wai and said that he was very lucky that she appeared nearby. But instead of getting gratitude, she noticed that Tang was somehow looking at her strangely. But he quickly realized that he was not looking at her, but at her sword. A moment later, Tang at her affectionately smiled in response to her and made a compliment, saying that the girl possessed a sword well. The girl modestly dismissed and said that quite often she was told. But Tan was no longer interested in dialogue. He noticed on the ground one robber, who, from fright, at the sight of a girl fainted, and Tan decided to get his clothes from his clothes, which extremely surprised his savior. The man did not think that he was doing something wrong. After all, they still stole this money from someone else, and he just selects what has fallen, can be counted. And he even threw 1 coin to the girl, saying that this is her share for salvation. That is the gift of speech from such impudence. He is just going to rob them. Therefore, when Tang was about to leave, she confidently stopped him. That's just not to scold, but to demand more money into your share. But Tang was ignored by the girl, saying that he could not give her any more. And this, of course, upset her. Tan told her not to kill, yet even for 1 nanny she can feed herself. She proudly said that she, never had to starve. And Tan noted that, apparently therefore, there are so many arrogance in her movements. The girl was a little offended by his words, but then suddenly the guy swept past her at such a speed that she was doused with a sharp wave of wind. And after a moment the man disappeared from sight. After a conversation with a girl, Tan went to a quiet village on the mountain. There he first stopped in a small tavern to calmly dine. But he was alerted by the fact that everyone present in the institution somehow looked at him strangely. He did not attach much importance to this, finished the meal, and left the tavern. But suddenly he felt that something was wrong with him. His head was spinning, and he coughed heavily, covering his mouth with his palm. A crimson spot of blood remained on his arm. He was poisoned. Despite his weakened state, he was able to return to the tavern and even take the lives of all visitors and workers who decided to poison him together. From the very beginning, he noticed that they behaved somehow suspicious. They must have poured something in him. But although his body was weakened, he was too strong externally and internally, so that this prevented him from fulfilling his plans. Strange village. The inhabitants have empty, dead faces. A gloomy atmosphere reigns around. He remembered the words of Chugok that this village itself was black blades. And then a large detachment of bandits in the habitual black robe appeared on the horizon. But no matter how many opponents were, for Tang it is not at all a problem. The news that the gang has problems quickly reached the headquarters of Black Blades. The head reported that they not only did not find missing people, but also attacked them. The leader, Sama-chan, thought that it was again Shavki from Murim decided to stick his nose where they were not asked. But they reported to him that the enemy is only one. A man, an incredibly strong master. Sama-chan refused to believe that a whole gang of skillful robbers cannot cope with all one man. But the servant assured him that this is true. This master has already killed hundreds of their fighters, and is now going to the headquarters. For a moment, there was a tense silence between them, and then some kind of noise was heard outside. Tan with a sword at the ready burst into the hall. That the weapon, that his clothes were filled with the blood of the dead enemies. Just for a moment, Ma-chan realized what was happening. He realized that the man in front of him was that bastard who decided to go against Black Blades. Did he destroy everyone who was on the ground floor since he reached the head? And this energy... It was the feeling that Tang was looking at him as a non-insignificance. But you can find out who is stronger only one way: fight him. But Sama-chan did not even have time to attack the Tan, as he threw him away from him and imprinted his back against a stone wall. At this time, Mr. Hong was already doing business in the very center of the village. He ordered his subordinates to arrest everyone in the village who had not yet been killed by Tan Yu. He informed them that this was the village of Black Blink's gangs and their main headquarters was located nearby, so no one can miss anyone here. All whom they found in houses and institutions were taken out into the street and reliably connected by ropes. It was even strange to see that everything was going so smoothly. And this story finally comes up to the end. It is amazing that only one person was able to achieve what neither the Emperor himself nor the entire alliance of Murim could cope with, and Mr. Hong could not help but glow with the happiness that this person helps him. By this time, Tan had just finished dealing with the head of the gang, and he brought him to the main square to the rest of the criminals. Enough, without strength. Tan pointed to Hong at him and said that this guy was the leader of the Black Blades. Mr. Hong was in the seventh heaven. On this, the matter was finished on the mountain. Having dealt with everyone, Tan said that he had to go. He promised Somi that he would return soon. There, Chan thanked his acquaintance for his help once again, and promised that he would contact him as soon as he settles everything. Tang nodded, and reminded that the investigator should not forget about another thing. He thought that it was about the fact that he should make sure that no one would talk too much. But Tan at the moment was worried about something else. He would like to receive the promised reward for the capture of all these criminals. Having completed the organization of arrest in the village, all the criminals were connected, and Mr. Hong joyfully led them to the main city square. People rejoiced. Black Blades are finally destroyed. But the leader of the Phoenix detachment, Namgun Soki, the only one understood that something is unclean here. How did this smart Mr. Hong be able to find out that the headquarters of Black Blades is on Mount Tianji? Even the Alliance Murim could not get this information. It was also obvious to her that behind this boy there is someone else from the department. Rumors that Black Blades are defeated quickly spread around the country and reached the head of the Alliance Murim. For them, there was no secret that the head of the district enlisted the support of a strong master of martial arts. A simple official could not do such a thing alone. Therefore, the head asked the servant to transfer the Phoenix detachment the following assignment, to find out the details in this case. If here some outstanding master is really involved here, then they need to find out who he is and to persuade to their side. Soon in Murim will be noisy. Advisor to the head of the alliance, Chegal-un, expressed his thought. If this master really exists, then they should be prepared for the fact that they will have to use gross power to bring him here. Leader, King of the Sword, Namgun Jung, agreed. After all, they do not yet know the intention of this mysterious master. But they had to find out. The case of investigating the circumstances was to be engaged in the Nemogun of the Plow. She was a huge responsibility, since she was the granddaughter of the head of the alliance, and was supposed to correspond to her high rank. She sat in one of the alleys of the city and reflected on where to start her work on the spot. But nothing sensible went to mind, as it was hungry. But suddenly someone noticed a single girl and came closer. It was enough. She noticed a plow and decided to share her food with her. A magnificent bun. She said that she had already eaten and offered Sochi to eat after her, and she was only glad to accept help from such a good child. Getting out for food, she recognized the name Somi, and then she introduced herself. When the girl finished eating, she asked the youngest where her parents, as she wanted to thank them. The girl did not even have to answer the question. since at that moment Tan Yu came up behind and stroked the baby on the head. And instead of her, he replied that he was the father of the girl. Sochi immediately recoiled, not expecting to meet the brown-haired, even in such circumstances. She recognized this impudent guy from the forest. And then I decided that it was even good that they crossed again. It was as if heaven sent him to her so that he helped her with the task. However, Tan did not even give a snock to say a word when he realized that she was going to ask him for something. He did not understand why he would help some stranger. While they were talking, Somi did not get out of his head what Tan called her his daughter. And then she turned to the elder, saying that she would like to help this aunt. And at the end of the request, Tang named not by name, but Dad, because of which she was instantly embarrassed. She called him the first time. This appeal has been an incredibly strong effect on a man. He simply could not refuse the child who calls him so affectionately. However, in exchange for help, the girl was supposed to help Tan at the house, somehow work out his favor. Tae himself with great pleasure took advantage of the moment when he could finally do nothing, but only command a new subordinate. Madame Namgun was insanely enraged by the fact that the guy was constantly mistaken nearby and smart, but he was just trying to teach her to do household chores correctly. After all, she was from a rich family and had never before she had to independently engage in washing, cleaning, and other things. Therefore, I had to step over myself and know the new one. However, soon she literally exhausted from boredom and fatigue, not wanting to continue this hard work. But Tang in no case did not agree to help just like that. She just wanted to get a few silver coins from the guy, and for the sake of this she had to plow as never before. In the meantime, work was going on at home. Tan got out to the city, where he had a meeting with Mr. Hong. He finally prepared for Tang a payment for his work. He paid the guy for help in a chest, in which there were 100 gold nannies. At the same time, he said that just yesterday the detective department took control of those guys who arrested in the village. They must have been transferred to the Eastern Bureau, where they will be sentenced to death. Now the matter was officially closed, which was glad of both Tan and Mr. Hong. While they were talking, Somi suddenly ran outside the window, playing fun. Mr. Hong smiled and told the man that he had an incredibly cute and kind child. But the master, so he knew that. Hong thought for a while about something, and then suggested Tan to send Somi to school. She is just at that age. The man somehow did not think about it before, but now the offer of a friend made him reflect on it. There Chan insisted that children in their time just need a school. This is a shame if the child does not even know how to read. In addition, she will be able to find new friends, and this will benefit her. The Hong is even ready to recommend one very good school to a friend. Tan did not want to hurry with the decision, so he said that he needed a little time to think. He did not even suspect that Mr. Hong expressed this proposal for selfish purposes. After all, he wanted to make Somi his daughter. In law, one cannot allow her to not be able to read and write. While adults were talking, Komoy investigated the garden of the head of the district with interest. But at some point, someone else's children's voice called out to her. She turned around and noticed that behind her was a boy of her age. He was extremely unhappy that some girl got into the territory of his house. He demanded her to explain who she was and what she forgot here. At that moment, an annoyed father already appeared behind him, who scolded his son because he shouted at Somi. He reminded the youngest, Hong Chin Rank, that he taught him not to such behavior. For them, Tani and Somi were important guests. You need to behave with them extremely worthy. The rank of rank obediently listened to his father, and after that apologized to Somi for being so sharp. Mr. Hong also additionally asked whether it was in order to Somi, and she said with a smile on her face that everything was in order. She was just a little surprised. It turns out this boy, and is the friend about whom the elder told her. The rank of rank was not very talkative, but his father pushed him to contact the girl. The boy was a little angry due to the fact that his own father refers to some kind of alien child better than his own. Therefore he was too nervous and ran away, and his eyes burned tears of resentment. Soon, Somi and Tang have already gone to their home. On the way, Tan at Somi asked if there was a chance that they would become friends and Chan's rank. And she replied that they would really have to get along. And then he asked, I would not want to go to school. She was so surprised by the sudden question that she even doubted whether she could go there. Tan said that she could do anything if she wants, and the joyful girl went off, shouting that she really wants to go to school and directly caught fire with this idea. In the evening, Tan had for her and Tae himself already familiar training in martial arts. Children have already entered the rhythm and made success. Sochi, who watched this and was aware of the latest events, asked Tan why whether Sochi would be in order at the Chong'an school. She is quite prestigious. Tang did not understand that this school really is so serious that my daughter can have some problems there. The girl said that the more famous the school is, the more difficult it is to get along with the children who study in it. She could confidently talk about it, as she knew from her own experience. She intentionally went to school under a different name, and it was not a simple whim. Parents did not want her daughter to be a special attitude due to status, but in the end she was difficult for her because they almost did not know about her origin at school. Be that as it may, she still put on her ass to the offenders. In any case, Somi was much stronger than it seemed at first glance, and if there is a case with whom she can't cope, Tan could intervene and solve everything. Because he is her father, and is obliged to protect his beloved daughter from everything. But the plow was still worried about them. After all, everything that Tan had was only this house. He did not even have status in society and stable work. Will he be able to withstand immigrants from great families or influential officials? Although it does not concern her at all. How things turn around. Tanny was ready to protect his child to the very end, even if he will have to go against the whole world for this. The perseverance of Tan is, and what aura came from him a little alerted by the girl, but she still did not see point blank that this dark energy comes from Tan Yu. So she decided that apparently, the master that figured out black blades somewhere nearby. The next day, Sochi followed the order from Tan Yu and took Somi to school. She was surprised that he entrusted it to her, and did not decide, like a responsible father, to accompany the girl himself. But this was not her business. Her task is to support the youngest and try not to worry about her. Fortunately, Somi had a great mood, and she herself was very strongly tuned to study, and if something was wrong, she knew that she could always seek help from a plow. She was worried that Somi had too kind heart, and, in which case, it would be difficult for her to stand up for her classmates, but quite experiences. She brought the girl to the threshold, and then Kumi had to cope herself. Now that the baby at school, the plow could be investigated. She went to the city center, not even suspecting that suspicious people had already been following her from the shadow. Before the start of classes, the teacher allowed Somi to introduce himself to other students and tell about himself. But all the children looked at her either completely disinterestedly or even with contempt, which greatly affected the mood of the baby. The teacher told her to go to class and sit down for any free desk. And Somi was very happy when in the corner of the class noticed the rank of rank. He was not so happy for her, but Somi instantly became easier when she saw among the rest a familiar face, and the time did not lose time. Already in the first half of the day, she seemed to have advanced very much in the investigation, so she ran to Tang Yu, who was fishing to boast of successes. During the investigation, she heard some people on the street whispering that they saw with their own eyes those who defeated Black Blades. I had to shake them well, but they told her where to find those masters. Therefore, in the evening she was going to go there. She was going to go to a meeting with 5 Swords of Humanity and invite them to serve in the Murim Alliance, but she has no information about who they are. Tang said that he had not heard anything about them, and did not really want to find out. But the Plow said that before that they did not take part in high-profile affairs, so even the Alliance Murim is unknown about these personalities. Or they worked in conditions of strict secrecy. One way or another, Sochi only remains to inform the Alliance Murim about them, and you can say goodbye to this terrible life of the maid. She thought so, but generally rejoiced early. Tan suddenly told the girl that he would accompany her at a meeting with 5 blades. He also eventually became curious to look at these 5 masters. Sochi smiled and said that he would gladly take him with him if he would behave well. Well, and if he pays her for it. Tan thoughtfully smiled in response and agreed to these conditions. Toward evening, Somi returned home and told her father about everything that happened to her at school. For example, that they studied thousands. She still did not fully realize that it was, but she was very interesting. And they also learned calligraphy, and she first held the brush. When Somi finished and went to bed, Sohai visited Tan W. She also heard Somi's stories about the school, but she was embarrassed that although the girl told a lot about what she was doing there, she did not say a word about new friends. This means that the peers did not accept the poor baby not very affably, and she spent all day. Father stroked the sleeping girl through the hair and reassured the Plows, and himself too, that it was just the first day. She wanted to hope that then it would become better. Be that as it may, the time has come to go to the base of 5 Swords of Mankind. Tan has not changed his decision to go, but first it was necessary to put Somi in bed. Finding these masters of Soha and Tan was not difficult. They were in the forest, not far from them. However, in every possible way they denied their attitude to the incident with Black Blades. The girl thought they were shy or afraid to admit. She knew that they helped Mr. Hong in his business. 5 Swords claimed that this was complete nonsense and just rumors that are disassembled by ignorant people. Then the plow, for the first time for the dialogue, introduced herself to him and said that she was the captain of the Phoenix detachment from the Alliance Murim, Namgun Soki. She said that she understands the desire of warriors not to reveal their personalities to the world, but the leader of the Alliance Murim wants to meet them. This fact interested them a lot. Then their head decided that they could not help but take advantage of such an accidental opportunity. And they lied that it was true that they destroyed Black Blades. They finally got out of the shadow in which they hid, and the plow could be better out of the face. Now she doubted her innocence. In terms of energy, 5 swords are no different from second-rate martial artists. Even she could deal with them. Then, in order to check her fear, she asked the blades to demonstrate her equipment, which they defeated of Black Blades. One of the masters looked at her strictly, proudly lifting his chin, and then he suddenly darkened. Does she doubt them? He stomped irritably, and the earth under his feet went cracks. He repeated his question, but already more strictly. Does the plow doubts them? Sochi looked around and noticed that the man not only broke the ground, but without a single sound, he broke several trees behind her, with only one hit of her leg. He resentfully said that if the plow still doubts their abilities, then let him leave. But she hastened to stop them and ran to them, desperately apologizing. Tang was interested in a broken tree. He squatted down next to him and thought that the man really did a good job. Rumors about the involvement of 5 swords of mankind in the defeat of Black Blades reached not only Soha, but also spread throughout the city. Ma Dok-jin, who was not the last interested person in this matter, was very unhappy, because even he never heard about these 5 swords. His servants were also not aware of what kind of guys they were, but only the last news they heard conveyed to the master. Then Dok-jin took an anger and hit his ward with one. It is not clear what was infuriated, but the man was used to taking his anger at those who come to his arm, and the brunette, one of the subordinates, had to get used to it. One way or another, it is highly likely that the rumors will be truthful, and these 5 swords are those who have committed Black Blades. Mr. Ma got up from the table, and once again with all the dope, he kicked the poor servant in his stomach. This time for the fact that he was too calm listening to his reasoning. Having calmed down a little, he gathered all his servants and said that he himself had to make sure how true the rumors were. Therefore, he ordered the guys to find these 5 swords. They had no choice but to obey. But if they had a choice who to serve, they would never work for such a cruel bastard as Dok-jin. The next day, Sohai had to leave the house of Tanyu, since the task was already over. She would like to imagine 5 swords to the Murim alliance as soon as possible. Tang ate, to promise that he would convey the words of farewell from the girl, and also threw Madame Namgun a small bag, the promised fee. She thought that the guy would give her only a few silver coins, and he was so disgusting that he paid a whole handful of gold. She shone joyfully, and said that now the nasty physiognomy of Tan has not looked so bad for her. Sochi for the last time said goodbye, and thanked Tang for everything, and after that she went away to go further on her mission. When the Tang was walking with Somi in the afternoon, and told the girl that the plow was left, the younger one was very upset. She was afraid that she would never see the eldest again, but her father said that if fate disperses, they would still meet again. Somi was still too young to understand the meaning of this phrase. Therefore, Tang was explained more easily. It seemed to him that they were not destined to break off like that, so it is likely that they would meet again. This reassured the girl a little. She, with warmth in her heart, remembered how she slept at the plow on her knees, and how they chatted, and even admitted to her father that she would like to live with a girl, although this is impossible. Then the father decided to translate the topic and asked the younger if she had everything at school as she said. The girl smiled radiantly and said that yes, there is very interesting. Tan was battered on the head and said that quickly with someone to make friends is not so simple. Therefore, if Somi has problems with this, then let him not worry. But do not also think that these are the only people whom Somi will meet on his life path. The baby squeezed the palm of Tanwai and confidently said that she, like his daughter, was not so easy to break. Tan smiled at her in response. Somi was a very strong girl. She is only 7 years old, but she is much older than many children of her age. And although there is nothing wrong with that, for some reason I felt a little sorry for her. Suddenly, the guy said that Somi should no longer bear the surname. Since he is Tan at Hyun, she is now Tan Somi. Whatever happens, he will always be able to protect her. So there is no need to be afraid of anything. But you need to boldly go forward. He patted the youngest by the cheek, and she agreed that she would try to follow only forward. In the evening on the city square, the atmosphere was not the most calm. Some new faces appeared on the streets, strong masters, whom the townspeople had not yet seen. Tan-I, who was also there, also drew attention to non-named. They emanated very powerful energy. Suddenly, One of the minions of Ma Jin told the captain that they discovered the whereabouts of 5 swords of humanity. They are about 10 to the north of Akian and are now heading for Hubei. An evil, devilish smirk appeared on the captain's face. So it's time to check if these warriors are really strong. The detachment of Mr. Ma immediately went towards 5 swords. And Tan Wai, who accidentally overheard their conversation, could not stay away now. 5 swords led a plow, so it was worth going after, making sure that she and 5 warriors would be all right. Meanwhile, Sochi confidently fled towards the main palace of the Alliance, and with such enthusiasm that the 5 soldiers were barely recalling her. Noticing this, she offered the men to rest a little. There were already 10 hits from those, but they did not want to admit that the road is difficult for them. No matter how hard they tried to hide it, the plows still understood everything. She invited the masters to take advantage of the technique of scurvy, since they are not used to the usual run. But according to the reaction of one of them, I realized that men were not trained in this skill. It was very suspicious, but she saw with her own eyes what 5 swords were capable of. But she was embarrassed, as many oddities associated with them, she noticed. Although now is not the best time for suspicion. Suddenly, she heard a strange quiet whistle that made her strain. Several shurikens flew in her direction, but she reacted with lightning speed and beat them off with her sword. The frightened 5 swords were already trembling with fear and hid behind the plows, looking around. On the branches of trees very close, Plow noted a crowd of people. It was a fortress of battle kings, and the girl recognized them. At the head of the detachment was Ma Jin, one of the 50 best masters of the Fortress of Combat Kings. There is not a single person in Murim who would not hear about him, and the man only foamed his ego. In addition, the girl was interested in the person who stood next to Ma Jin, one of his servants. The long-suffering brunette is the master of the sword Guanmu Jin. A detachment of warriors immediately made it clear that they arrived not for Madame Namgun, but for 5 swords of humanity. Sochi suddenly realized that with her, after all, the master of the highest level, which means they have a chance to win. But then, I saw how sorry they looked at the opponents. Even their knees trembled at the sight of the real master. And then she realized that today, perhaps, it would not be so easy to survive. A few days ago, even before 5 swords crossed from Soha, they learned what rumors walk around the city. And even then they decided to take advantage of the chance to play in a large way. Once there was such an opportunity, they can receive a reward for capturing the heads of Black Blades and escape to the western border. But they will have to deal with the Namagun family, so it was necessary to come up with a way to conduct them. Therefore, they specifically fed the extreme trees in the clearing in order to deceive the impression on the pommel of the plow. Her appearance on the horizon was a coincidence of pure water. But when they found out why she arrived in Akian, it became clear that such a chance could not be missed. Therefore, when she arrived at them, the men already knew for what purpose. They had to play a little in front of her and impregnable for eating persuasiveness. But from the very beginning, they planned to agree to her proposal. And their plan worked. But now, when they were face to face with a real danger, the head of swords realized that they had gone too far. Only it was impossible to give up, and the head continued to play in the public, hoping that with his self-confidence he would sow the grain of doubt in Ma Jin. However, the more 5 swords tried to make great masters, the more this mixed the man. He made a long way from Shangxi to look at 5 swords in the battle. The remaining participants in 5 swords quietly began to dissuade their chapter from this dangerous venture. But he said that he would take care of everything. He stepped forward and exposed his sword of invisibility. The man looked menacingly at the enemy and said that he gave him the last chance to escape, and then no one would suffer. But Jin did not even think to retreat, but on the contrary, he also exposed his sword. Then the head of 5 swords of mankind was only one. He waved his sword and suddenly threw a smoke saber under his feet. The smoke curtain enveloped the entire clearing, and 5 swords of humanity took advantage of this moment in order to escape from the battlefield. Sochi was left completely alone against a huge detachment of a black fraction. Her surprise and indignation from this betrayal knew no bounds. And Ma Jin burst into a rolling laugh. He was very amused that the head of the Phoenix itself fell on the bait of such idiots. The girl was incredibly embarrassed, but could not say anything against it. It would seem that this could have ended, but Jin changed sharply. Inside it was already boiling anger and irritation due to the fact that the plows accidentally directed him on a false trace. Therefore, he ordered his people to kill her and 5 swords that could not yet go far, and a whole crowd of martial arts went into battle. Now the plow is not to be not approved. To the head of 5 swords was the first to reach the master of the sword, Guanmu Jin. He hoped that he would finally meet with this mysterious master, that finally there would be someone who could withstand Ma Jinu, but they came across some kind of powerless clowns. The guy was so furious that he poured his aggression on a poor man, kicking him with his feet. Suddenly he heard an unfamiliar voice that he turned to him. It was Tan W. He from the very beginning unraveled a catch in 5 swords of humanity, but hoped that their funny plan would be successful. But they were still killed. Tan did not have time to come on time and help. Guan Jin tensed when he saw an unfamiliar master who came out of the forest. He strictly ordered Tan to explain himself. Who is he? At this time the plows were very hard. She struggled to fight off Jin, who personally decided to do her. His ability to control one hand was impressive with a huge sword, but the speed with which he inflicts his blows is even more striking. No wonder he is called a master of a destructive sword. Although the plow and held on with dignity, reflecting all his attacks, she was still much weaker than Jin, and would not have extended it against him for a long time. Jin expected something more from the famous Namgun family. He inflicted shots over and over again, until finally he could hit her on his wrist especially, and then the sword flew out of her hands, and she herself fell into the cold ground. She was amazed. Mr. Ma triumphantly put the blade of his sword to her face. Muram should be controlled by strong. The loser must silent, showing respect to the winner. Then the plow asked the man to just kill her, and not to humiliate her, putting her honor even more. The man was not averse to fulfilling the last desire of his victim, so the last time he waved his huge deadly sword at her. But at the last moment of Sochi, a familiar voice heard. It was Tan W. He said that he was upset that the girl went to the cons, but for the whole day she could not get out of Akian, and he warned her that the case could turn into dangerous. But her ambitions were blinded so much that she really did not see anything. Jin, without struck by the Soka's sword, sharply turned to the stranger. Tan did not answer anything, and only threw the man of his minister under his feet, Guan Mugin. Then Jin concluded that the stranger holds the sword in his hands tolerably, once defeated the master of the sword. But he warned that Tan plays dangerous games if he consciously decided to oppose the leader of the dark faction. Sochi scaredly crawled back from them. She was surprised that Tang was able to defeat Guan Mugin. Previously she could not even think that a man generally owns martial arts. She remembered how they first met. They crossed on Mount Tianji, and shortly after, the Black Blades were defeated. Is he really the mysterious master who saved the city? Tang ate calmly to the girl and lent her sword for a short while. Sochi tried to stop the man. Is he really going to fight Jin alone? Tan remained cold and focused. He promised that this would not take him much time, and extending the sword towards the enemy, he ordered him to attack. He flared up with a new interest, but at the same time he got angry even more. Is this arrogant back there has no idea who is going to fight with? Soha's heart froze with anxiety. No matter how strong a person is, a thin sword will not be able to withstand the blow of a huge blade Jin. Its strikes are unimaginably block or reflect. Jin hit Tan at the sword, putting all his strength into him. But Tan was not an ordinary person. He was able to stop even such an unimaginable power to stop the tip of his subtle sword. It is he who is the great master of the sword. And Jin is just a self-confident boob. That the plows, that Mr. Ma were speechless. Tang had enough simple wave of a sword to block Jin. Then the angry swordsman tried to strike more and more, but Tan dodged, then blocked them, then made retaliatory blows. Jin poured a whole lot of attacks on him, but not one was not successful. Stopping the sword of Jin, Tan asked him, did he really decide that if he focuses on speed, he could overcome the lack of variability when using a large sword? The idea is interesting, but concentrating at speed, Mr. Ma could not put all his strength into the blow. Some time ago, Jin felt that the sword with a heavy large blade has a limit, and from that moment he completely focused on the speed of the blow to overcome this limit. But there was some kind of wise guy who not only could solve his weakness, but also resist him. However, Jin managed to achieve that he could easily rotate a huge sword, like a wooden stick. So he gathered a huge stream of chi energy and attacked Tan Yu to make his super gear. A large, sharp blade cut through the air, sparkling with dangerous sparks in all directions, even laying around the air around. But Tan, at a slight wave of his hand, was able to stop this blow of frantic power. How does he dare to humiliate the strength of the great master? The man looked boredly at his enemy and said that he did not try to humiliate him. Just neither the speed nor the power of the shock of the sword, Jin, would not compare with his strength. The sword of Mr. Ma crackled and the blade began to break. It was enough to click on him a little more. The sword with a bang fell apart into a lot of sharp small fragments. And, having disarmed the enemy, Tan was not difficult to put his chest with a sharp blade, completely depriving the support and the chances of victory. The wounded, bleeding master fell under the feet of Mr. Tang at Hen. The guy threw the sword to Soha, returning it, and she asked him with a trembling voice whether he destroyed the black blades then. He didn't even have to answer, she was convinced of this. But she did not understand why then he did not tell her anything from the very beginning. Tan carefully advised her to stop worrying about useless things. Sometimes there are moments when you have to pretend that I have not heard and did not see anything. Let it just refer to today's victory as a gift of fate, since she was able to get alive from this battle, despite the skill impregnated with arrogance. Having finished on this, Tang was returning home. But behind him, like a tail, Guanmu Jin slowly hobbled. Tan asked him why he was dragging along. Suddenly, the guy's eyes lit up with admiration, and he asked Tan from allowing him to join the Great Master. There are many strong warriors in the world, but which of them can cope with Ma Doc Jin? Like a child. Finally, Mu Jin found a man who would indicate him the path to greatness. He sincerely wanted to join Tani and serve him. Study the new, be a faithful subordinate. But the man did not answer him. And when the guy repeated the question, he received a strict, sharp refusal. Mu Jin persistently begged the man again and again, but each time he received the same answer. Then he said that he would still follow the Tan, even if he does not want to. Let it be better than Tang to kill him, which refuses and throws one in a dense forest here. And at the same moment, the man hit the annoying guy with his knee in his stomach. This guy was quite strong for its age. However, Tan was alarming that the hatred that burned in his eyes, very the same as he had once when he was obsessed with the idea of becoming the most powerful master. This is the look of a person who is ready for anything to climb up. The warrior must have self-esteem, but the more hatred will master it, the more dangerous. He will not last for a long time if you do not learn to control his emotions. Leaving the young man to wallow on the grass, Tan went deep into the forest and made sure that all 5 swords were killed by enemies. The events of today's night reminded him of previous times. After some time, Guanmu Jin woke up from the fact that someone had poured a whole bucket of water on his head. He looked around in fright and realized that all this time he was in a swoon. And now he woke up connected, on cold ground. In front of him stood Doc Jin and warriors who survived the fight. The chapter that there is strength to kick the poor young man, calling him a traitor. They saw how Mu Jin begged Tan from taking him with him. Mu Jin was not even going to deny this. All this gang has long been dangled to him. For many years he was not put in anything, like some kind of dog, and all due to the fact that Mu Jin became more famous than its leader, and he woke up envy, hatred, a complex of inferiority developed. He was no longer going to ceremony with his master. What is the owner if he is ready to kill his own subordinate? He is just a nothingness. Doc Jin exposed his sword, or rather, what was left of him. And he said that for such words he would arrange a painful death to the guy. But at that moment when the heads of the head wanted to attack him, Mu Jin was able to untie the rope on his hands and reflect their blows. Then Doc Jin rushed into battle to kill the ungrateful servant with his own hands. But Mu Jin, even despite his serious damage, moved faster than the former master. He got to a man a few steps and fixed his blade in the face. One confident movement, and he cut his eyes to a self-confident moron. It was impossible to stay here anymore. Mu Jin, with a striking speed, disappeared from the clearing, and the soldiers did not even have time to figure out what happened. The master of the sword fled along a rocky road, not paying attention to the fact that the stones painfully dug into bare feet, nor that everything was floating before his eyes. He could not stop. He must survive to become the strongest. But no matter how he tried to ignore severe wounds and fatigue, he soon again lost consciousness, falling to the ground. The next day, the market, Somi finally found her first friend at school, Chi Yak, and they went for a walk together. The rank of rank also went with them. Seeing one of the shelves, Somomi stopped and offered the boy. She can buy fruits, and he is a manda, a Korean dish resembling dumplings, and they will all go together. The rank of rank was indignant. Why should he buy something in general? But Somomi said that they are with Chi Yak are simply very hungry, and a friend wants to make a manda. Then the boy gave up and went to the counter to pay off the seller, and the girls joyfully rejoiced. But while the boy was engaged in buying, Somi noticed something strange. She heard some strange sounds from around the corner and went there to see who published them. A few hours have passed since that moment and a deep evening has come. Tang Yu was excited that Somi never returned home from school. Therefore, he went to the city himself to find her and check if nothing happened. At first, Tan approached an accidental merchant and asked if that his daughter saw that. The man smiled affably and said that he saw how she and friends bought a manda and sweets today. Tan thoughtfully thanked the man and went on. The man went towards the shop where the manda was sold, and suddenly heard that a quiet cry was heard from around the corner. He wrapped it there to check what was there, and such a picture opened before him. Somi, dirty and all in tears, sat on the ground. There was blood on her dress and hands, and bandages, and any garbage were lying around. Tan leaned toward her and asked, worried about what she was doing here at such a time. Then his gaze fell on a scarf on which all kinds of herbs and branches were laid out, and then he noticed that Somi was not alone here. None other than Mu Jin lay under his feet. He was unconscious, and children's hands earnestly tried to close his wounds with herbs. Somi, Chi-Yak, and the rank of rank tried in every possible way to help the poor young man, but they did not succeed. They found him in the lane a couple of hours ago and wanted to save him. They tried all the herbs, but it did not get better. Chi-Yak suggested calling the detectives to the help, but the rank of rank assured her that there was no sense in this. Obviously, the conflict occurred among the warriors of Murim. The government will not intervene. It was especially difficult to endure what was happening Somi, because he once reminded her of her. Therefore, if Chi-Yak and the rank of rank could even pass by, Kumi would not forgive this for herself. Tan had no other choice but to help the poor fellow get better. He recognized this guy. It was the one who desperately begged him to accept him as his subordinate. Tan knelt down next to his daughter, and he asked why she is trying to help a person who does not know at all. In front of her eyes, tears came up again. She replied that Mujin just looked very lonely, and he also seemed very, very scared and does not want to die at all. Tan raised his daughter in his arms and reassured her, saying that everything would be fine. He turned to all children and praised them for his efforts. Tan promised that he would do this person, and let the children go to the nearest tavern, go and wash themselves. Friends picked up Somi and, calming her, wandered towards the taverns. This guy was very lucky that Somi found him. Tan simply could not refuse his daughter to help. Tan took the guy home, bandaged his wounds, and put it to sleep in the house. And then he chatted with Somi on the porch before bedtime. She was very worried whether the uncle whom she found would be in order. Tang told her that he had done everything in his power to help. Now it all depends only on himself. If the body is strong enough, it will survive. Somi would really like him to survive. Tan said that if she cares for a guy, he will definitely get better. After all, she is a child born under a happy star. These words were very motivated, and Somi immediately ran to take care of the wounded young man. When the girl ran away, Tae himself told the master that this guy was already in the grave with one foot in the grave. If everything ends badly, then the words of the Tan are wound only stronger. Tang was well understood this, but if Mujin survives, then this will make his daughter, on the contrary, only happier. Tae himself was not confident in a good outcome, so he jokingly said that if the guy survives, he would give the Tan all his condition. But he suddenly seriously reacted to this statement, after which Tae himself strictly looked at him. Is Tan trying to provoke him? If so, then the man is clearly sure that the guy will survive. Not wanting to get into debt even more, Tae himself hastened to explain that he was just joking, and he asked if Mugin had such high chances to get better. Tan answered the question with a question. Did Tae himself hear about people that they were born under a happy star? In the world, those who are deprived of all luck are sometimes born, and sometimes people under a happy star are born. Those who were born under a happy star accompany success, but they have to go a difficult path full of hardships until their luck manifests itself. Somi lost her parents and was on the verge of starvation, but when she met with Tan, fate prepared for her, finally allowed the star to freeze. Everything that she will touch will be accompanied by luck. A few days have passed, and Mujin suddenly came to his senses. He was incredibly surprised that he ended up in an unfamiliar house, but only one thing was surprised at him. He was alive. At that moment, Somi suddenly appeared above his head, madly rejoicing that the guy woke up. She said that she found him in the lane, and her dad saved him. Somi so caught fire from the fact that the young man finally woke up, that she could not resist the spot, and immediately ran to report the good news to her father and Tae himself. Mujin tensed. Who were these people at all? At the same time, in another place, Sochi finally returned to the palace of the Alliance Murim. Young Namgun, the leader of the Alliance, asked her granddaughter if she managed to find the one who destroyed the Black Blades. In her head, the words of Tanwai came up. Sometimes there are times when you have to pretend that I saw nothing and heard nothing. Although he said these words, she could not lie to his grandfather. Sochi admitted that she found him. The leader was pleasantly surprised, but did not understand why then the granddaughter returned to the palace alone. Did this man really not want to meet with the Alliance Murim? She quoted his glory to his grandfather, confirming that the man did not want to appear in the palace. The leader asked if this master was really as strong as they say about him. She said that the guy fought in her eyes with Ma Dok Jin and dealt with him in 2 accounts. So easy. with one of the 50 best masters of the Yellow Fortress. The leader thought, "Is this master of a demonic cult? Maybe he is therefore refusing to work for the Murim Alliance? Or perhaps just leads the life of a hermit." Soki also mentioned that Tang said that in her movements of the sword, there is too much arrogance. Then the leader was already angry in earnest. But how dared to say such a child whom Yung Namgun himself raised? This guy imagined a lot about himself. However, he discovered that even him, the king of the sword, was beyond the power. Of course, maybe he said stupid things, but this is quite interesting. The leader praised the girl for a good job and sent her to rest in his chambers. And Mujin, meanwhile, gradually came to his senses. A few days ago, he was so exhausted that it seemed that he was about to die. But it means not everything is lost yet. The main thing is to survive. He will certainly become great at all costs. And then the one whom Mujin certainly did not expect to see. It was Tan W. He noticed that the guy was in a very good mood, and from that concluded that he was in order. The young man froze and looked at the Tang of it so surprised, as if he saw a real ghost. Then the man first introduced himself to him, and he said that he was the girl's father, and the one who saved the young master of the sword. Tan did not take his honors for his salvation. He admitted that, if not for the Koami, the guy would have died. Mujin thought for a while, looking at his bandaged hands. And after that, both Somi and Tan W, now he owes his life. Upon injuries, Tang unmockily determined that before they found him, his associates attacked the young master. And he told the youngest that in Murim he had to do everything possible to survive, even if you need to betray your own. Therefore, he advised the young man not to accept their words at his own expense. If Mujin was in the place of Dak Gin, then perhaps he would have done the same. Mujin knew this very well, and Tan advised him to throw it out of his head. If his heart is poison, then his blade will be poisoned. And the poisonous blade is easier to break. The man allowed the patient to stay in his house until he recovered. In addition, if he now leans out, then former associates can be deprived of his head. But of course, Tan could not allow the young man to just wallow on the bed at his expense. Therefore, he said that Mugina will have to try and work out his bread. The guy agreed and again thanked Tang for his favor. And when the man left, he tiredly fell his back on the bed. He really was grateful to him, before no one had cared about him. The next day, Mujin had already went out to work and helped Tae himself, but he was completely mediocre in household chores, and Tae himself had to teach him everything. If Sochi had a problem in that she knocked out the water too poorly from the washed linen, Mujin did it too much. The brunette was unhappy that the young man constantly stood above his soul and watched him, but had to endure. Tae himself was the main one and had the right to manage the process and command. True, he was upset that Mujin would not stay here for a long time. After the plow left, he again had to drag everything on himself alone, so he would be glad to appear in the house of a new slave. But this nerd can do not know anything. He spent an hour on just one washing. Mujin did not understand why he should fulfill his duties for Te himself. But Tae himself reminded him that the owner said that Mujin should work out his stay here. So, in fact, he is now also a servant. Mujin was still stubborn and refused to comply with the orders of the brown-haired. He said that he would agree to obey only if he wins him in a duel. They were so angry at each other that they really did not fight. But Tae himself was not going to get involved in a fight, but chose another option for resolving the conflict. He ran to complain Tan at the fact that the new servant was rude and threatened. Mujin rushed after him, but did not have time to catch up with the guy. Tae himself turned out to be faster than the master of the sword, and this sorceress of the brown-haired mantled him even more. They chased one after another in the yard until they noticed that Mr. Hong had arrived in the courtyard. Then Tae himself abruptly stopped and greeted the head of the district. Surprisingly, Vuen did not arrive at Tang, as usual, and to arrest Tae himself. Now that the Black Blades no longer posed a threat, the investigation department was engaged in the withdrawal of smaller criminals. And looking at the list of violators of the law, Mr. Hong came across a statement about the search for a guy whom he knew well. It was Tae himself, who worked for Tan W. He seemed to Chan in their last meeting suspicious, and it turns out not in vain. Therefore, Mr. Hong immediately went to detention, and he ordered his people to grab a poor guy. Tae himself hid his criminal past well and left no traces, so he decided that if he behaved quite brazenly and confidently, he would push off suspicions from himself. The guy said that this was a mistake and he was not a bandit, but Mr. Hong did not believe. And at that moment, when he almost exposed his sword on Tae himself, Tan Yu appeared from behind and wilted the slap to his friend. And then he asked him what was the matter. Instead, Chan spoke Tae himself. He was outraged that the investigator so suddenly burst into them and arranged a mess. Was he not supposed to go to Beijing? Tay himself said that in the world there is no person with a reputation cleaner than him, which, of course, was not true. Then Vaughn showed the guy an ad on which a slightly clumsy portrait of Tay himself was drawn, and under the image, his name and description of the atrocities. He was accused of murder, opium smuggling, human trafficking, storage of state property, manipulations with prices for shares. Even Tan had already recommended that he just admit everything. But Tay himself continued to deny everything. The baby Somi, who tried to convince the elders that the senior servant was not like that, also stood on his side. She closed the brown and said that the person who made the drawing was mistaken. Her Uncle Rab did nothing wrong. Maybe he just has the same offender. Then, in order to prove his innocence, Tay himself promised them that he would catch the real guilty of these crimes, and Somi would help him. They were released, but only for a while to give them a chance to prove the opposite. Somi sat on Tay himself, and they went through the forest, until the baby asked where they were going and what a plan they had. But honestly, Tay himself had no idea what to do now. He lost his temper for a second, not realizing what he was doing. It was his mistake to take Somi with him in search of criminals. After that, it is impossible to get disappointed. In addition, the man on the poster really resembled him. But Tay himself really did not remember that he did all these things. Yes, he stole, but there were no crimes on his account as described. While Tay himself walked thoughtlessly through the forest, some more caught up with him. Tani and Mu Jin followed the younger ones to find out what the thief was going to do. Tay himself said that he was first of all going to check the gaming houses. But Tan was more interested in something else. Why he took Somi with him, even realizing that the road could be dangerous. Tan took his daughter from Tay himself and handed her to Mugin. Somi was upset that she was not taken with her, but Tan promised that he would take her for some walk later. And then he sent Mugin and the baby home, while he himself remained to talk to Tai himself. The guy vowed to the elder, which was not involved in all these atrocities. And he believed, because he believed that Te did not have enough to do all this. And he told him to confess everything only because he was joking. In this matter, everything is simple as 2 times 2. The one whom the department is looking for is a guy who is engaged in the trade in opium and people. It is quite easy to calculate, to catch and interrogate all the scumbags involved in such dirty matters. Tay himself suggested that mountain bandits could be involved in this, and Tan supported his idea. Mountain bandits always remain in one place and go into the world only if they are called by representatives of the authorities. Therefore, there is only one place where they can be. Tani and Tay himself went to Mount Yahello together. On the very grief, it was surprisingly good, and you can make it even better if you build a house nearby, as the eldest believed. But Tay himself did not agree. There is nothing to build a house in a place that teems with bandits. He was generally very nervous during this journey, since he was infuriated that in order to clear his name, it was necessary to climb into the den of the bandits and risk their lives. He was very scared, and against the backdrop of stress, he constantly shouted at the Tan, expressed his experiences and fears. Tan already had blood from his ears almost went. Tay himself also blabbed that he is infuriated. What he does so much for his home in Tanwai, but he still gives his preference to Somi and Mugin. Tan listened carefully to him, and then admitted that the guy really worked a lot. And he asked what he wants. Tay himself just wanted to become stronger. Tang, instead of providing support and somehow help him, said only that he did not object to Tay himself to become stronger. Their conversation was interrupted, never ending, because suddenly a whole pile of arrows flew from the sky. Tang managed to push the youngest from them just in time, because somewhat dug into the ground very close to the guy's body, but the arrows were just the beginning. At the same moment, the guys from all sides surrounded the grouping of the robbers. These were the very mountain bandits. Tay himself decided that he had nothing to fear, because Mr. Tanwi, but when he turned around he saw that he was amazed at the arrows. He was lying on the ground without moving, and said that he could not fight. Although he looked relatively calm, his arrows pierced him, because of what he could not move. Tay himself scaredly replied that now there was no time for foolishness of Tan. He was not so injured. But Tan Wai and did not move from the place. He recalled that Tay himself just wanted to become stronger. Let him fight. Then the bandits again attracted their attention to themselves and ordered to turn their pockets and give everything that is. It seems that the training of Tai himself begins right here and now. Tang is not going to help him at all. He did not even move his finger. Tay himself had to pull himself together and confidently stand against a huge crowd of robbers. There were at least 3 dozen of them. For such a third-rate master as he is too much. But he is not going to give up without a fight. The bandits grinned and advised the guy to just give up until it's too late. His companion also seemed to have leaned back. Tay himself drew the attention of the bandits to the fact that the man was alive and healthy, just did it to take his eyes off. But no one believed him. Suddenly the guy remembered that he had once won an experienced master with the help of scurvy, and this instilled a little confidence in him. The guy rushed to the attacker with the help of his technology and slipped right under the blade, which was directed in his direction. The enemy hit the ground with his sword, not understanding how this guy could easily slip away from him. Thanks to this, Tay himself managed to disappear from sight for a few moments, and then the guy struck a strong blow to the back of one of the warriors, because of which he lost his balance and staggering fell. The mood itself has become even more positive and decisive. Although the blow is not strong enough to cause serious injury, but as you know, the master is afraid. In one jump, Tay himself was already several meters above the ground, and rushed towards one of the archers of the group. His powerful fist cut the archer cheek, and at the same time knocked out several teeth. A powerful blow threw a man from him with a huge power wave. Another enemy was cut down and imprinted in the ground. Someone tried to throw a spear at the guy, but Tay deftly dodged him. Then the bandits decided that it would be much more effective to attack not one, but collectively, and then the decisiveness of the guy fell through the ground. But suddenly he heard a serious voice of Tan broadcasting 2 steps to the right. Tay himself, without hesitation, obeyed, and this helped him dodge the next attack. Having evading the sword, the guy turned out and crashed the swordsman right on the jaw from below. But he managed to defeat only the senior master, which only angered his minions more. Seeing that such a crowd of warriors flies on Tay himself, which he cannot cope with, Tan decided to intervene, and in the blink of an eye scattered all of them in different directions. The powerless robbers fell to the ground, barely remaining conscious. Tay himself gloomily recalled that from the very beginning, he realized that Tan was only pretending. In any case, the brown-haired man did perfectly. Tan praised him. He specifically allowed Tay himself to deal with them himself, because it is impossible to get rid of fear and start fighting in full strength if your life does not depend on the outcome of the battle. Tay himself asked the master, really, if he lost and was on the verge of death, Tang would not help him. He replied that he would not help. You can't rely on the help of others if you want to become stronger. Tay himself involuntarily thought that Tan is really incredibly cool, although sometimes terribly annoying. The next step in the plan was to bring the leader of the group to life and interrogate him. To do this, Tay himself doused a man with cold water. He instantly jumped. Tan did not allow him to even say anything and immediately went to business. They have several questions. First, he showed the man a drawing and asked if he knew who was depicted on him. He pointed his finger at Tay himself and said that the drawing was very similar to him. Tan then decided to miss this question, and he said that he and Tay found opium in his henchmen. The bandit joked, saying that opium always wound up in the lane. But I didn't like the Tan. They did not come to play games. If the bandit does not tell the truth, Tang will make him so suffer so that he will then pray for death. And the robber could not continue to evade questions. The powerful energy of the Tang was very scared by him. This guy is an incredibly strong master. Suddenly the man voiced one name, the union of a triple sword. Tan told him to continue. After the black blades were destroyed, everyone, hidden for the time being, began to come to the surface. Although everything looks peaceful outside, the fact remains. The number of gangs trying to earn money is gradually increasing. Among them is a group called the Triple Sword, which is operating in the Kona area. They supply opium. The bandit also knows that they are strong. He heard that these guys mean in martial arts. In addition, they are always in masks. No one knows them in person. In fact, he did not want to get involved in this matter. But they made his gang so much that there was no choice. They were simply forced to buy opium. By the grace of the union of the Triple Sword, several detachments in this area have disappeared without a trace. Tan tried to get out where their base was, but the bandit did not know. They came to his group once a month, and he does not imagine when they will appear the next time. Although Tay himself was indignant, Tan believed that the bandit laid out everything he knew. In the end, the guys forced the robber to lay out the whole opium for them that he had. At the sight of the angry gaze, Tanyi, and with the feeling of his powerful aura, was difficult to disagree. Akyan Market. Soki walked around the square and tried to bypass the dependence dependent on the opium, which began to break, and then they were lying right in the middle of the street. She realized that rumors were not lying. Opium spreads not only in Akian, but also in many other cities of Hanam. She thought so much that she did not notice how she ran into someone. Sochi was almost glorified on a passerby, when she suddenly stopped short. It was Gvon Mujin, whom she did not expect to see at all. And in his arms he had a little baby. She still did not know that Mujin stopped at Tanwai, so she was surprised to see these two together. At night of the same day, deep in the forest on the mountains, the robber prepared a new portion of opium. His accomplice just went to pick up the goods and discuss the latest news. The one who was engaged in preparation asked the second if he found their detachment of the one who committed Black Blades. Their group mistakenly believed that Tae himself dealt with Black Blades, and while they were not able to get to him, even the fact that this very man pretended to be a young man did not play on their hands. The accomplice said that Tae himself either simply hides very well, or already in the grave. But the man did not agree. Anyone who dealt with Black Blades simply could not die. Be that as it may, the accomplice promised that they would certainly find a guy and kill him. And he recalled that the elder only needs to sit here and prepare medicines. The man was angry and rushed the detachment with the search. If he could cope with this himself, he would never have gone to such dangerous cooperation with the Triple Sword Union. The guy from the detachment also said that recently the head of the district discovered the traffic opium when he was chasing mountain robbers. The information has not yet been confirmed, but there are suspicions that he is going to transfer their opium to the disposal of the detectives of the Emperor. They needed to return everything at all costs, otherwise the detectives would catch them by the tail. The elder was very much nervous against this background, and the guy from the detachment barely restrained his aggression. This person is still useful to them, so you need to maintain a good relationship, as if I did not want to fill him with the face. It's time to arrange a hunt and protect your detachment. When Tan returned home, he suddenly met with Madame Namgun again. Half an hour ago, she just ran into Somi again, and she, in joy, led the girl to her father to share the joy of an unexpected meeting with him. Tan asked Namgun why she granted them this time. Before answering, Sochi herself wanted to ask the guy one question. She wanted to understand what the hell is Guan Mujin here. Tang said that this guy is now part of his family, but the plow was outraged that the man made a part of the family a young man from a dark faction. But since the master left Dak Gin, he was now not part of the dark faction, and he was very pleased that Tang called him his family. Tan noticed that the plow was saying strange things. It turns out, when he helped her, he supported the bright faction, and now, dark, since he sheltered the master of the sword. Be that as it may, now the turn of Mrs. Namgong to answer his question. She sighed heavily and agreed. She said that some time ago, their alliance began operation to eliminate the opium traffic, and found that the source of a larger number of supplies is Honi. They tracked them and became convinced that the situation is much more serious. Not only in small villages, residents are obsessed with opium, but also in large cities there are many cases of opium dependence. Therefore, Sochi followed the trail and he brought her to the Hones. In general, this is a matter of state importance that the imperial family should solve. But several small fractions with which the Murim alliance cooperates also fell into decay due to addiction to opiates. Union of the Triple Sword, as they call themselves. The leader of this group uses a special magic to change his appearance. After these words, suddenly Tae himself attracted attention to himself, who suddenly dawned on what was the matter. It turns out that this group took advantage of special magic to look like him and cover his atrocities with a stranger. Tang also explained to Soha that they knew that someone under the guise of Tai himself is engaged in drug smuggling and people trading. He handed the girl a small bag and said that this is an example of opium from the supplies that they squeezed from the mountain bandits. They believed that this was not an ordinary opium. Most likely it is made in a special way. It causes several times a stronger dependence than the usual one. Sochi asked where he was from Tan, but he did not reveal to her all the details. She also asked if Tan was able to catch them, although he did not have the necessary information, but there are some clues. Only Plow will have to pay for this information. He will give a reward for the destruction of Black Blades. He will tell you what he learned about the new cause. Sochi with difficulty but agreed, but only on one condition. The Alliance Murim will pick up all the laurels after solving this problem. She was embarrassed to ask for this, but it was necessary to restore the reputation of the Alliance after the problem with Black Blades. Tang never chased recognition, so he easily announced this agreement. Yes, and the man himself understood why the girl asks him about this. So he did not prevent her from acting, as she believes will be better. Tan called Tae himself to him and called him to go together for the Hongwan. They met with a man and told him about their plan. He tied them up and said that it was time to go to the investigative bureau. The rope was connected by Tae and Tan W and even Madame Namgun. They hoped that this would help them lure the enemies. The criminal will definitely come for evidence to cover the tracks. Therefore, when they deliver opium to the investigation bureau, the culprit will certainly appear. He will definitely want to come to stop them. If you think about it, the grandfather's advisor also said to Sochi something similar, that she must find an opium. Tang knew how to think through good plans. He knows how to act ahead of lead. As a master of martial arts, he is much superior to Plow, and his head is cooking be healthy. From the very beginning, he elevated the walls with each other. He spoke arrogantly, as if no one was a decree. But despite this, he cares about her family, and Mrs. Namgun completely trusted him. Soon, a detachment of investigators noticed on the horizon of strangers. Sochi instantly broke the rope on her wrists, and she exposed the sword. A small group of bandits stood in front of them, and they were all armed. Mr. Hong scattered at them. How did they ripen to get in his way? But there was a do not care who he is and what place occupies in society. Tan also freed his hands from the rope, and then his subordinates prepared for the battle. He ordered Tae and Mugin to try to catch these robbers alive. Everyone took a fighting position and prepared for a complex battle. To grab the thugs alive in such a brawl is much more difficult than just sending them all to the next world. Moreover, there are so many of them. In addition, Tan did not understand what's on his mind. For some reason, he decided not to help his comrades in a fight. Sochi could only rely on the help of Gvon Mugin, because Tai himself did not have enough skills. If only he did not interfere under his feet. The girl asked the allies, what is their plan? But there was no question of any planning. Gvon Mugin was the first to rush into battle, without even discussing anything with the others. He was so confident in himself. And it is not in vain. He managed to cut down one of the archers of the enemy detachment from one blow on his back, and also quickly get rid of several opponents, amazing his comrades with their dexterity. Tae himself intensely said that it is enough for them to take only one person hostage. It is not necessary to interrogate everyone at once. He simply did not want to fight such a huge crowd, but Sochi said that they could not lose against people like these low people. A person will not die, even if he cut off his hand or cut the tendons on his feet. We must fight boldly. You can inadvertently. The main thing is that the enemies are preserved in enemies. And she rushed into battle after the master of the sword. I had to try well, but they defeated all the bandits and connections with those ropes, putting it in a circle. Tan praised friends for a good job, and then Mr. Hong ordered to remove the masks from the thugs. What was their surprise when under the masks there were people, very badly mutilated by the effect of narcotic substances. There, Chan looked strictly at one of them and ordered to explain who they are and who they work for. But it was useless, so they would not tell anything. This task was taken by Tan W. He turned to the bandit and said that the rumors that the head of the district had discovered drug traffic could only spread within the Changhua district. So, as expected, the base of the robbers is located there. The mutilated man began to scream, twitch, and desperately deny everything. In general, he refused to answer investigators to any questions. Then Tan W spoke. It is obvious that the bandits came here after they heard rumors in Changsha. It is unlikely that they belong to Lan Hao, so their sect is somewhere nearby. Suddenly, a man tore his ropes on himself and with a sword attacked Tang W when he felt that he knew too much. But the master knocked out the enemy's sword with one hand and hit him so much that he almost beat him all the insides. This master was enough. He was convinced of his innocence and asked Sochi whether she had ideas what kind of sect could be. She said that only 3 sects are suitable for this description, and all of them are included in the Murim alliance. She was painful to realize that Murim was disgraced again. She hoped that at least this time everything would go smoothly. It feels that everything around is falling apart. But fortunately for Soha, Tan agreed to help her in this matter further. Just do not forget that his help has a price. Money was not a special problem for her, so she was only glad. Together, they went to check the sects that Madame Namgun spoke of. At this time, the authorities of the interrogated detachment began to worry a lot. So much time has passed, but they have not yet returned. They refused to believe that their dexterous masters could not cope with the imperial shakings. Chu Banji said that these guys were raised with the help of the drug he created. They were strong and completely given to their owners, and at that moment the door to their shelter opened. On the threshold appeared the one whom they were afraid to see, the name gun of the plow. She hoped until the last that she was mistaken and people were not involved in this case from a bright faction, but one of them turned out to be the leader of a small sect, which is part of Murim, and the second, Chu Banji, whom she knew, but remembered very poorly. Goosebumps ran through the body of men with horror. Right in front of them stood a pommelong of the plow, and on the street it was eliminated by the external ambush of Chante himself. They did not expect such a turn of events. An angry grimace was displayed on the face of Chu Banji. Finally he found Tai himself, whom he had so long wanted to grab. He almost pounced on the young man, but the ally stopped him in time. First, you need to understand what is happening. Banji angered the naivety of a man. He told him that they were opened. Therefore, you need to cut the throats to all those present so as not to fall under arrest. In addition, Tae himself, from whom they had long wanted to get rid of, is also here. The guy did not suspect that he had been a hunt for a long time. Banji told his associate that if he does not finish the young man right now, he may no longer count on his help. He had no choice. Sochi tried her best to help Tae himself to get rid of the bandits who tried to harm the reputation of the Alliance Murim. But outside the base there were too many. If it goes on, then it will not be enough for a long time. Someone shouted and warned her about the danger to the right, and in the last second she managed to cut with the sword of the tapped enemy. Tangi managed to warn her about the danger, which was just arrived in time. And at the same moment, Banji got out of his konura to the street. Suddenly the plow remembered how she knew him. It was a long, standing enemy of the Namgun family, and he spoke very sarcastically in Kolko about the grandfather of Sochi. She ordered him to shut up. After thinking a little, Tan concluded that it was not a bald man. Namely, Banji is a man who pretended to TE with the help of special equipment, because his face was covered with red ulcers, and these are traces of frequent use of reincarnation magic. Tang jokingly noticed that Tae himself on this ugly peasant and so similar, and without magic. First, you need to grab the enemies. Tan was ordered by Tae himself to do the same, master that on the left. He sighed heavily, realizing that he could not get rid of, but did not argue. Tan told the guy to look at the enemy more closely. The developed lower body indicates that most likely a man owns a scurvy well. And in the use of scurvy among all those present, with the exception of Tan, Tae himself was not equal. The faith of the master instilled confidence in Tae himself, and he immediately began work. Tan had no doubt that the student would win, so he believed that they definitely figured it out with one. Banji remained. It finally dawned that since Tae himself was so obediently acting on Tan Yu's instructions, he was much more powerful than the guy. So it was Tan who destroyed the black blades in which Banji previously took the last place. The man instantly inflamed with a fierce hatred of the master, and he promised to kill Tang with his own hands. Tan warned that fighting with him is a dangerous idea, and a man would stop better in time. But he did not want to hear about it. Tan took the black blades from him, the place that he considered his home. He deprived him of everything. Tan sighed heavily, looking at the despair of Banji. For a long time, he did not see the crimson wind, not subject to the eyes of others. He symbolizes the one who brings with him troubles and misfortunes. A person whose mind is filled with unkind intentions, and actions cause evil. Tan did not want to again become someone's enemy. But perhaps this is fate. The guy tried to reason the enemy for the last time. But he did not calm down, and unable to restrain himself with a desperate cry, attacked Tan, a man whom he hated so much. But only a bloody puddle appeared in the place of Banji instead of the body in the place of Banji. And in all directions, the electrified energy of Tan Yu. Everything happened too fast. Others did not even have time to catch the essence of what was happening, as Tan et al. In a moment mercilessly killed his enemy. At the same moment, all other bandits who were on the territory of the base were killed at the same time. Sochi, before that I saw many deaths, but first encountered such cruelty. Nobody attacked the robbers. They simply could not move, distraught with fear. Due to the mixing of energy meridians, QE energy flowed in the opposite direction, as a result of which the channels were destroyed, which led to death. But thanks to the drug Chubangji, they were much stronger than ordinary mortals. Tan looked coldly at the Snoks and said that they would cope with the rest without him, and he went home. The mission is over. The north of Honam, the island of the sages near Lake Donchonho. The hunter, Sagyk-chan, was barely able to climb on one of the most inaccessible peaks of the island. For thousands of years, people are strictly forbidden to enter here. But some time ago, rumor passed that all the prohibitions were lifted, so Gikjung decided to check what was happening here. Suddenly, stepping on part of the earth on top, he felt that she was falling under him, and swiftly flew down, right deep into the high cave. He fell from such a height that he was very bruised and lost consciousness. The guy generally survived after that. When he woke up, it was already night, and Gikjung could hardly realize where he was at all. Suddenly, in front of him he saw a huge stump of the body of a giant snake covered with gold scales. He realized that he accidentally found the remains of the legendary land of the immigrant. Only from the sale of this information he will receive so much that he cannot work until the end of his life. Gikjung got to his feet and decided to examine the other tunnels of the caves when he stumbled upon the mysterious 3 skeletons. Once they were people. All of them were turned towards the stone slab, as if they were honored by someone. The man came closer to make it better to see everything. There should be a name on a memorial stone. Under the light of the torch, he saw that on the wall, behind the grave, there was an inscription. It was said there, "In honor of the god of martial arts, we will perpetuate the place where he began. We honor the god of martial arts and praise his achievements. In honor of the god of martial arts, we share his anger. We remember the god of martial arts and shed tears about those whom we could not protect. By removing God, we leave his burial plate to eternal peace. In honor of the god of martial arts, 3 heavenly will fall asleep eternal sleep." On the grave plate itself, the name of the god of martial arts was written, Tan at Hin, and at home, Tan at work went on as usual. Despite the fact that it was insanely hot, Tae himself and Mugin had to dig in the beds all day. Sochi sat nearby, watching them, and ate ice cream. She did not understand why the guys dig the earth in such a frying if you can hire someone. But they had a direct order from the master. It is impossible to escape. The guys asked the plow to help them instead of sitting and gloating, but she refused. Only Somi called to herself so that the girl rested, otherwise she worked no less than the guys with the ground. Kumi, too, could not refuse work. Dad gave her a task, to help, which means she should fulfill it. Tan seriously decided to engage in the physical preparation of the family after the incident with the union of a triple sword. Suddenly, he appeared behind the plow and reminded her of the proverb, "Who does not work, he does not eat." He pointed out that even Somi works in the sweat of his face, although she is just a child. But his reproached instruction did not impress his reproach, and in general, she pays Tan at living in his house, nannies per day, which means she is only a guest, not labor. Then Tan suggested that she conclude a bet. The one who is the first to drop the remaining part of the field to work will win. Sochi at first she said that she did not know how and did not want, but Tan put 1 silver nanny on a con. And the plow is very apathic for money. Therefore, until the evening I plowed the earth to win a bet, not paying attention to either the heat or my fatigue. That even the guys were surprised at how quickly she works. Meanwhile, in the palace of the Alliance Muram, Mr. Namgun reached the news that the hunter discovered the secret cave of the god of martial arts on the island of the sages, which expected shocked an elderly man, because some more events were associated with this island. The servant reported that the bodies of the 3 heavenly are also there. 3 heavenly. Names familiar to all martial arts. Creating a blow of Sanfen, Damo from Shaolin and Heavenly Demon, the founder of a demonic cult. 3 people who had the greatest influence on Muram. They were nicknamed Heavenly, since none of the now living was able to reach their heights. However, the inhabitants of Muram knew only part of the truth. Mr. Namgun could not ignore such news. Everything is not so simple here. This is a scale matter. The elder of the Udun, Hogon sect, reported that the representatives of their sect will soon go there. Since the body of Taigongin is in the cave, it is not surprising that Udun decided to intervene. Zheng Sanfen, who founded the sect of the Udun, created Taijitsuan, a fist of a great limit. But those who helped Sanfen who truly know martial arts became Taigongjin. Zhang Sanfan accidentally received a special technique of Taigongjin and, having studied the basic principles of Taoism, created a sect of martial arts of the Masters of Budan. It is not surprising that the members of the Udan sect so respect Taigongjina. And since the body of the greatest master of the demonic cult of Yongmuguan is also in the cave, the demonic cult will not remain aloof. One wrong movement can lead to war between light and dark fractions. Realizing the danger of this situation, it was decided to send 200 warriors from the alliance of the Alliance Muram, and the sect of Udun will take control and make sure that the body of Taigongin is completely preserved to be delivered to a blow. They will also need their help to study the secret cave. About the remains of Taigongjina and Jungmuguan will take care of the sect of Udan and the demonic cult. Much more wagon was disturbed by something else. Who is the Chu Ren to us? Although it is one of the 3 heavenly, but in comparison with the other 2, she did not have any achievements. They do not even know for sure whether she was a member of a bright or dark faction or was part of a demonic cult. Who will be drawn into this business at all? All the following days in Honama it was also hot, and Tae himself barely had the strength to do anything. Digging the earth in such weather was tantamount to death, so he wanted to go to swim. And the plow supported the idea. The water in the Donchanho lake is simply magical. But Tae himself decided that she was just laughing at him. Because the lake is very deep. Does she really want him to drown? She laughed and said that the guy would survive with such jibes, even if he goes to the bottom. Mu Jin intervened in their skirmish and asked to stop, finally pointing to argue. For example, he did not waste time on conflicts, but sat and ate the watermelon, looking after his child. And the Tang was impatient to dig a field next to the house, although it is more profitable to grow products yourself. Sochi was surprised that Tang has this in general. While the guys continued to work, she asked them who was generally the Tang of Hyun. They certainly did not know, but suggested that with such and such a force, he could well be a mercenary, or like that. And Somi suddenly intervened and said that Daddy used to be a carpenter. After all, he repaired their house and built a barn, and most of the things in the house. His hands. Sochi directly froze for a moment. What is a versatile person, this Tang W? But she could not believe that a person with such a powerful force. Just an ordinary carpenter. And not only the plows considered it strange. Then Somi pointed to the elders to the rake and proudly said that even her father made them. At that moment, Tanyu. And he asked them to stop delving into a foreign past. Instead, he mentioned that it was restless in Akian recently, and asked if they knew what was connected with. Neither the guys nor the plow had been in the city for a long time, but they suggested that anxiety is connected with the union of Triple Sword. The baby intervened in the conversation and said that she knows the real reason. They only talk about this at school. Something important was found, and the girl invited her father to guess what exactly. At this time, a male pigeon suddenly flew to Soha. Some message was tied to his paw. She immediately took it off to read it, and Tan also became interested in whether something happened. Instead of answering, the girl suddenly said that she urgently needed to return to Murim. Her mood was sharply deteriorated, and she began to look very serious. The girl hastily said goodbye to everyone and hit the road, and the whole family of Tan remained in suspense, thinking what such an important could happen in the alliance. Tan suggested that Tae himself deal with this issue and find out the details of the case. While Madame Namgun fled to the castle, she was thinking about what was written in the message, God of Martial Arts. She had heard legends about a person with that name before, but I never thought that someone would really find the secret cave and the bodies of the three heavenly. Tae himself quickly found out in the city that a cave of the God of Martial Arts was found and returned to tell Mugen and Tan W. Mr. Hong himself confirmed this, so there was no doubt about the reliability of the information. They did not need to be the great connoisseurs of history in order to understand that everything is very serious. Mujin knew that the God of Martial Arts is the same man of legends, who was also nicknamed the Almighty Spirit. The one about which cannot be said for sure whether he really lived 1,000 years ago, or is it just a legend. Suddenly, Tae and Mujin unanimously told the master that they needed to get into this cave. She is the proof that the omnipotent spirit really existed. In addition, you can find a lot of valuable Somi also heard about this cave at school, and she was interested in learning about her in more detail. Tang at the slyly grinned. He too was not against visiting this cave again, so he agreed, not admitting that he was the same god of martial arts. Tang did not think about it before, but there were many legends about his person in the world. The fact that he killed countless inhabitants of Median lands, and that he was not just the greatest master, but also always found a way to get alive from any trouble. And finally, that he fell at the hands of 8 immortals. For the inhabitants of Murim, it was incomprehensible to the mind that someone managed to find real traces of a person, according to universal conviction, which existed only in legends, and gain access to his heritage. In Murim, there has never been a more significant event of this. And Mugin was surprised that Tang was not so interested in this matter. Was he really a carpenter and does not even know about the spirit of the omnipotent? He even refused to go with the guys to the island of the sages, learning how far it is. Tan also told the guys that there is nothing important there, and there is no need to waste time to arrive there earlier than the Murim alliance. Mugin was alert that the master was saying as if he knew something. Then a completely crazy thought came into his head. Maybe Tan was really an ordinary carpenter, but later somehow got the heritage of the god of martial arts and became incredibly strong? As if having read his thoughts, Tan said that Mujin would not imagine. He is wrong. Tang was dreamily remembered that the serpent of Imoy lived on the island of sages 1,000 years ago. Only short fragments remained in his memory. On the island of the sages, there was a huge millennial serpent of the Imperial and a huge many other amazing creatures. The island was flooded with poisonous plants and insects, and the animals living there were several times more than usual. All is to blame for the special energy that the immigrants radiated. Tan had 2 decades to put the island in order. He arrived there about 15 and finished his studies on the island at 35. He came across defeat again, and countless times he found himself on the edge of death, fighting with immigrants. But in the end, he survived. And on the island, there were only traces on the rock, testifying to the long years of his training. And he has not the slightest desire to return there to look at them again. Suddenly, Tae himself ran into the hall and said that the Alliance Murim had already left Hanam. This story attracted so many people that they need to hurry if they want to get to the legacy. Tan strictly replied that the guys could not decently dispose of the power that they have now. What is the point of chasing heritage and trying to get even more? He told them to stop empty chatter and go training. If you are lucky, they will be able to find a source of power much closer than they think. So let them continue to cultivate the earth. Tae himself sadly said that such a chance falls out only once in his life. Tan looked at him. The guy said that he will never have the opportunity to see the remains of 3 Heavenly. He heard that, along with a memorial stone, the bodies of 3 Heavenly were found in that cave. And after these words, Tan suddenly became cold and serious. He sharply changed his decision, and he agreed to go with the guys to the island of the sages. They immediately loaded things onto the ship, which Tang built, and hit the road. And for some reason, Tang decided to take Mr. Hong with him. And Somi left him at home, play with the rank of rank. After a long time, Tae himself announced that they were on the spot and began to moor the ship. When they landed ashore, they was surprised to find that Mrs. Namgun was already on him. Although this is not strange, it is logical that she, as a representative of the Alliance, was sent on a mission. And she was not surprised, as she realized that rumors about what had happened also reached the guys. But Tan said that he was not interested in the rest. He is only interested in the remains of the 3 Heavenly. Sochi was surprised to learn that the very Cave of God was indifferent to him. Tang Yu believed that the Alliance had already begun to put everything in order and explore the cave. But things were different. The same hunter destroyed all the entrances and exits to the cave, so they have not yet been able to get inside. Recently it was raining, because of which the earth was very wet and at any moment could collapse. It turns out that the entrance to the cave has not yet been detected. Tan said that he then wanted to talk with that hunter, but Sochi disappointed him, saying that he was already dead. But they do not know who is guilty of this. The man said that most likely the discoverer discovered something, which means that this was probably immediately a target for everyone else. Tae himself was tense that the island was too quiet, but the plow explained that the remains of the 3 Heavenly are located here. No one would dare to arrange a turmoil. Tan smiled when the plow called this place of the holy earth god of the martial arts. It sounded grandiose, and he was very proud of this. Sochi admitted that she does not really believe in these stories. It is strange to hear about a man who killed so many people, never lost to anyone, but in the end took and fell at the hands of 8 immortal. Tan laughed when he heard the version of the death of the Almighty Spirit, which was a little outraged by the plow. But he immediately stopped and asked what she was doing on the island. She said that she was sent to trace whether any suspicious people would appear on the island. Fortunately, the Alliance Murim and the demonic cult have already discussed everything. No one is going to expose swords or fight. Suddenly, someone next to the rock shouted loudly, "Found!" He found a passage to the secret cave of the god of martial arts, and Soha immediately went there. Tae himself said that, according to the agreement of the leader of the Alliance and demonic cult, only those who found the entrance can enter the cave. Then Tanwu ordered his subordinates to remain on the shore so far and monitor the situation, and he will go and take a bit. Allegedly, such a long boat was tired of him. He himself went to wander through the forest, simply said so that the guys did not get behind him. The news that the entrance to the cave was found from the north. But Tan did not remember that there was an entrance from that side. Black pictures of the past began to arise in memory, about how he survived in this forest, how he trained. Since then, a whole 1,000 years have passed. The mind is not comprehensible. He just succumbed to sentimentality for a moment, and then came in. This is not to his face. You need to hurry until others get to the cave. Tang at the cliff, on the northern part of the island of the sages. This was the place that he used to enter his youth, and jump down the cliff down. Surprisingly, there was absolutely nothing at the bottom, even after 1,000 years. It seems that during this time, a person's leg did not step here. He walked along the bottom of the gorge, running his palm along the accurate rocks. Here he went into the cave earlier. Even traces of training remained on these stones. He knew that besides him, no one would guess to enter the cave from this side. Having passed a little deeper, Tan entered the place where it was so long ago, and he discovered those remains of the great masters that everyone talked about. The whole 1,000 years passed, and Tan probably had to sit with them. But by the will of fate, he remained in this world, and these guys retired. 3 Heavenly from a young age strove for his strength. Everywhere they followed him, trying to catch and expose the blades whenever a convenient case was being touched. Although his lifestyle was not good enough for them to call him a teacher, 3 Heavenly were his most faithful friends and followers. He appreciated them and now realized that he was very longing. Tae and Mujin himself at that time wandered aimlessly across the island, dying with boredom. Other visitors to the island shrugged this couple a little because they were afraid of Gvon Mugin, who had very bad glory. Noticing his oblique glances, Mujin advised Tae himself on the alert, even if it was boring. Tae himself in response clowning, said Mugin to enjoy such an interest in his own person. Thanks to his popularity, even Mr. Hong stood, frozen with fear, although he tried to deny it. Tae himself reassured him, saying that there was nothing shameful in the fact that he, having no combat experience, was a little scared, being among the harsh masters of martial arts. Mujin asked both of them to shut up and stop arguing, because he noticed something unusual and pointed out to his comrades. Several dozen armed ships moved towards the island. Mr. Hong from such a little eyes from the orbits did not jump out. Their Chan hoped that the guy was mistaken, but the ships were absolutely provided with guns. In addition, the ships sailed right on them, and even the guns began to aim in their direction, as Tae himself seemed. It did not seem. They really were preparing to attack the island from the sea. And just a moment later, cannon shots rang out and a bright flame flashed. Many shells flew over the guys' heads and hit right on the cliff, in which there was a cave of the god of martial arts. The earth underfoot trembled from such a powerful blow. They were attacked by especially dangerous enemies. Therefore, it was necessary to immediately hide in the nearest refuge. Running away, Mujin thought that it should have arrived by representatives of the Sandwaves Alliance. It is known that they have been looking for the innermost secrets of the gods for years. The one who made the most efforts, this was the first elder. Mujin was not sure of his innocence, but the fact that they were dangerous and tuned not friendly was already clear. Explosions around began to occur more and more often and with greater strength in various parts of the island. Sochi, too, could not help but notice this attack. The horizon burned with a red flame. Who in general of their enemies could afford such expensive shells? But Guan, a representative of a demonic cult, most recently said Lady Namgan that he did not like the atmosphere that reigning on the island. It seemed to her that the demonic cult was worried in vain, but their proposal to examine the surroundings was quite correct. What to do? Why did this happen as soon as they found the entrance? Although, on the other hand, the only way to protect the cave is to block the entrance. Sochi invited the allies to begin to concentrate their strength on getting rid of enemies. The head of the branch of Honami agreed with her. They do not know how deeply they can enter the cave, so it is better to stop the attack here. Go and Dan, the leader of the sect of Udun, also agreed with them. First, you need to deal with those who allowed themselves to desecrate the sacred land. Sochi ordered men to deal with enemies right away. Meanwhile, the island was burning with an increasingly aggressive flame every second. Tae himself, Vaughn, and Mujin could barely break through the veil of smoke and dirt in search of shelter. Mr. Hong even scaredly hid behind the tree, hoping that the guys could deal with enemies without him. All the same, it is not enough from him. People who arrived at the island just look at the cave, and who did not know martial arts were in particular danger when the cannon cores flew on them directly from the sky. Tae himself noticed this in time and hastened to warn people. But he did not have to deal with this on his own. Soon the help arrived. The leader of the Udun sect ran out to the shore. By this time, their common enemies had already landed on Earth and Ginjin tried to find out who they were and what they want to achieve. The soldiers said they would not answer his questions. And then a fight between Black Ninja and the Alliance Muram immediately ensued. Unknown in masks suddenly attacked an alliance and a demonic cult. In the northwest of the island it was quiet. After all, everyone rushed to prevent the attack. Just a couple of people defended a secret entrance. However, another group of unknown in masks quickly went there. They were not only strong, but also mega are fast. The 2 defenders of the entrance simply had no chance to resist the bandits, so they were quickly struck. Unknown in masks had only a few hours to complete a secret assignment, and they immediately entered the cave. It turned out to be quite deep, so her study could take more time than they expected. But their leader, going a little further, noticed that air flows had changed, which means they are almost at the goal. As a friend, they found a desired cave, but did not expect to see another unknown master from the Alliance inside. It was Tan W. They immediately exposed the swords and ordered him to introduce himself. But Tan has more than once uninvited guests. The Alliance was lucky that Tan decided to linger in the cave, hearing strange sounds. He did not think that people like these miserable pirates would be the first to get to the cave. Well, but they saved Tan from many problems. He immediately realized that they were enemies and decided to deal with them before they were making a noise. Tan noticed that they were holding a sword in their hands quite confidently. They looked like hired killers from the past. The man, only in appearance, determined that their skills are quite good. But in vain they came here. With his self-confidence, he greatly angered the young men, and they confidently rushed into battle. Strangers created a tang around the ring around and ran very quickly around it, hoping to disorient and confuse. Tan even approved their ingenuity. The technique could even be better than Shaolin. The ninja determined the man by the aura that he was definitely a master, but decided that in order to cope with him, even minimal skills would be enough for them. But so far, none of those who attacked Tan Yu survived. Therefore, they simply did not have the idea of what trouble they got into. Suddenly, one of the warriors tried to attack from behind to attack, abruptly failing. But Tan did not even have to turn around to understand this. With one movement of his hand, he beat off the blow and threw the warrior to the ground. In the blink of an eye, he mortally wounded one of the enemies. But thereby I gave the rest for the rest that it opened during this move. What was only a deception, but the enemies led and attacked him from all sides. Tan has only grinned their naivety. If they thought their heads, then they would have a chance to live longer. But even more interesting, Tan raised one of the daggers, who dropped the warrior he had killed, and sharply cut them several enemies at once in one blow. The mutilated guys could barely stand on their feet. The most hardy of them cursed quietly under his breath. Tan told him that the possession of inner ki has not yet made them almighty, and I decided to teach them a lesson how to use a dagger correctly. Another wave of a blade, and he cut the body, so a barely living warrior. Another victory on the account of the great master. When the warrior fell, a pair of signaling checkers fell out of his robe, from his inner pocket. Tan thoughtfully raised one of them. Unknown, who attacked the island, fought against the Alliance. They tried to get to the secret cave. They must have been going to give a saber to the signal of the retreat for those who remained on the island. Or is it a signal that the goal has been achieved? Be that as it may, they greatly facilitated the work of Tan at this find. During the battle, Sochi suddenly heard a strange sound from the side of the cliff, and sharply all their enemies turned in the opposite direction and began to take their feet away. They suddenly stopped attacking and fled. No one could understand why they did this. Why synchronously and suddenly? And this is just Tan from the cliff gave a sign with a smoke saber. Going Jin was disappointed when he realized that they had not found out who sent these people in masks, and those whom they seized alive committed suicide by accepting the poison. One of the warriors told the leader that before they retreated, he heard a strange noise, so loud, as if warning, and only then did the head of the blow realize that it was a signaling checker. They immediately went to the secret cave to find out what happened there, and Guan and Danjin and Sohei with them. When they got to the destination, they found that the cave was completely empty. They were broken. How could they be carried out in such a stupid way? Guan suggested starting the persecution immediately. Then there will be at least some chances to detain criminals. The men went in pursuit, and Lady Namgun left in the cave to stay here and defended this place. Suddenly she was left completely alone. But at least she finally had time to sit down and rest a little. Recently so many things have been happening. Suddenly she noticed that from the cave there was only some kind of memorial plate. Small, she did not notice her right away as she entered the cave. But what surprised her more, the name was written on her, Tang by the Hen. And Tan himself was already sailing in a boat, which he stole from the dead enemies, taking with him the remains of all three heavenly. Upon learning of what happened, Mr. Namgun independently arrived on the island to inspect everything. As a result, not a single person from the Scent Detachment could explain to the head of the Alliance who attacked and took the remains of three heavenly. It was bad. Not only the corpse of Taegon Gin, but also the traces of other gods disappeared without a trace. They did not find a single clue. Given the time, money, and efforts invested in this work, without exaggeration, we can say that they were too arrogant and eventually failed. But in one, the detachment was sure for sure. This is not the work of the Alliance sand waves that tried to attack the Alliance. They followed their movements from the very beginning. This is either an unknown alliance or people from other lands. Mr. Namgun suggested that it could be someone from a demonic cult. What surprised his advisors? Young Namgun was not going to declare that he was right. He was simply lost in guesses. But he made his advisors think about it. Although they discussed the details of the study of the island with a demonic cult, it is quite possible that not everything is clean here. To the opinion of Namgun Chan always listened. He was a recognized master of martial arts. His unsurpassed mastery of the swordsman rightfully earned respect on the Central Plain. They say that no one can become as wise, invincible like him. Everyone was glad to see him the leader of the Alliance, but the inhabitants of the Alliance were sad to think that his period of government was coming to an end. Exploring the cave further, The advisor drew the attention of the chapter to traces of swords on the wall. But the leader said that this is a useless clue. It looks as if someone made them specially over old traces to erase someone's traces. Now it is impossible to find something here. In parallel with that, the leader was concerned about the loss of valuable finds from the cave, because he hoped to find in it something that would prompt him to improve his strength. And then his sword possession technique has long reached the ceiling and does not develop. After all these events, Tan Wai, together with Tai and Mu Gin, returned home, but did not give them a rest right away. Tan sent them to find some kind of clearing near the house, and he went home to take something. While he was not there, Tay himself told his comrade about his guess. In fact, Tang did not sleep on the island. He would not be able to sleep during such a noise. In fact, he watched them from behind the bushes, watching their battle, like training. Or maybe he went to the secret cave to find something worthwhile and give them, which was already more close to the truth. At that moment, Tang finally returned. He had a large bag on his shoulders. The guys immediately ran to the master. Tan apologized to them for having to wait so long for him. They immediately forgot about the difficulties of waiting. Rejoicing that the Tang was apologized to them for the first time, the man threw the bag under their feet and said to look inside. Tay himself was the first to run to him, hoping that he would find something important and valuable there. But only 2 shovels fell out of the bag, which of course was very upset by dreamy young men. The guys asked Tanny why he brought a shovel here, and then he made them dig. They had to prepare 3 deep pits, and the guys had to comply with the order, although they were already tired of this constant fuss with the ground. And also they did not understand what was the meaning of these pits. What a prominent thought again got into the head of the master. When the guys finally coped with their work, Tan praised them. But from fatigue, the praise was felt more likely as a mockery than something soothing. After that, Tan said Tay himself to climb into the bushes and carefully bring what is hidden in them. When the guy looked behind them, he discovered that the meadow was empty. He said this to the master, but he was ordered to bend down and extend his hand to the ground. When Tay himself did this, he felt that his palms seemed to dive into the water, or falls through the invisible barrier. It was a spell hiding things from the gaze of strangers. When it was dissipated, Tay himself saw in front of him 3 skeletons, which Tan stole from the cave. Of course, the guy first froze with horror, and then scaredly recoiled back, screaming. He asked Tan whose remains are. The man did not answer, but ordered his students to bury these 3 with all the honors. At night of the same day, in the Alliance Murim, a branch of Honami, Sochi sat in her room with candles, and could not throw out the grave from her head that she found in the cave. It was the same funeral plate about which the hunter said, who was the first to discover the cave. It is clear that this tablet was installed by 3 heavenly in honor of the god of martial arts. And the name drawn on the plate, Tan by the Hyun. She drove off the thoughts that it could be the Tang of the hen that she was thinking about. Many people with the same names live in the world. Thinking about this, the girl did not notice at all how grandfather entered her room. He noticed that his granddaughter was worried. He asked if her mood was connected with what happened on the island. But she said that there is something that bothers her even stronger. She wondered, can a person live 1,000 years? Grandfather laughed loudly, then embarrassed the girl. And he told his granddaughter that a long time ago, Qin Xuan made a lot of efforts to create a medicine for immortality, but he never escaped death. The life of each person has an end, but there are exceptions. Jung talked about 8 immortals. These are those who have long defended Murim and Central Plains. Of course, this is just a legend, but if you think that it is true, then there is probably someone who could achieve immortality. Then Soki thought that it was stupid to assume that the sign somehow refers to Tan W, as undoubtedly he has outstanding abilities. But how can he be a god of martial arts, the strongest Murim in history? Sochi thanked the elder for dispelled her doubts. It is not believed that a strange person robbing the pockets of the bandits can be as strong as 8 immortal. Young Namgun drew his granddaughter's attention to the fact that they had not spent time together for a long time, and he offered to take a walk together to Donchanho Lake. For a day, Tay and Mujin himself finished making graves 3 heavenly, and Tanny was pleased with the work done. In the evening he came there and poured himself a cup of suj. He told the guys that during his lifetime it was their favorite drink. Tay himself first came closer and asked Tan from the permission to pour a glass of him. The man allowed the young man to treat the deceased. For some reason, Tay himself thought that he had to do this when he watched how seriously Tan reacted to their burial. Tan today looked especially lonely. Tay himself lifted the cup and sniffed the fragrance of the drink. He smelled well, probably was expensive. As soon as the guy was sipping a sip, Tan hit him so that Koju and Tay himself flowed directly from his nose. Tan said that he did not allow the young man to drink, only pour it out. At night, when this whole official part passed, the guys finally could feel a little more freedom and decided to get to the bottom of the master. They knew that these were the bodies of 3 heavenly. Even the names on memorial signs confirmed this. But for some reason, Tang did not recognize this and said that the names are only a coincidence. Tae himself was very angry that the master was holding them with Mu Gin for idiots, and he begged Tan to admit, but he repeated that the young man was mistaken in time. Mu Jin watched this silently. He also wanted to know the truth, but saw how much Tan boils at every comrade's question. Tae himself was lucky that Somi suddenly ran up to him and asked to help find her ball, because a few more questions and Tang would have broken into a guy. Tae himself hesitated for a short while, but could not refuse the baby to help. Therefore, he ran to the backyard to help find the flu ball. Tan took the girl in his arms when Tae himself left and said that he first hears that they had a ball at home. Somi only laughed. Father hugged the girl and praised her for this small act, which saved his nerves. Then Somi released her father's shoulders and said that there is one question that torments her. Lady Namgun left them in such a hurry. Is everything in order? Tani, with a smile, answered the girl that she certainly does not know. But he suspected that the Alliance Murim is furious now, because they were not able to get anything. Going to the house, Tan told his daughter that Sochi should be busy with his own business. But then he heard that someone was knocking on their gates. Opening them, the man was surprised to find that on the threshold stood the one whom they had just discussed. She tried to make an innocent expression on her face, as if she just came to them at such a later time. So she also brought her grandfather with her. Tan decided that they all know, since they came together and so late. But Tan did not show his anxiety, but rather, he was very polite that he liked Namhun Chong. Sochi said that they walked along the lake and wanted to stop somewhere for the night, but did not find a single free place in the inn. Tang at the hospitably invited them inward, although he released a sharp comment that they seemed to be busy people, but they have more than enough time. Mr. Namgun did not agree. At his respectable age, he is all in his work, but very rarely he has time for rest. Tan expressed his surprise that even after what happened, Mr. Namgun could smile so carefree, and this comment has already touched the old man. But he did not show. There was such a tension between the men that even the plows felt and was frightened. The Tan further silently led them to free chambers. He warned that the night would get into a pretty penny, but they would bring free food. When Tan left, Namgun said that his granddaughter had some strange friend, and he asked if he was somehow involved in a dark faction. Sochi said that she was sure of this, even though the man does not admit. Young realized that Tan has a really strange young man at the same moment when he first met his gaze. Sochi worried that they were incorrectly acted, leaving the alliance in the turmoil, but Mr. Namgun could afford to be too lazy. In the morning, Somomi came running to her father and said that she wanted to go to Soha, since they can finally spend time together. But Tan upset her by the fact that at the moment it is impossible. The girl came not alone. Somi gloomily picked the floor with a boot, hoping that her father would still allow her to visit her older sister. But he did not say that. Then Mujin entered the room. Somi ran away, hoping that she would be able to talk with Soha for at least a minute. And Mujin, left alone with Tong Yu, expressed anxiety caused by a sudden visit of the Namgun family. Still, Namgunjung is the king of the sword. Tang for the first time heard about it. Mujin told Tan that he was also the leader of the Alliance Murim. The old man is as strong on the battlefield as 8 immortal. Tan understood that the plows told him about him. When she talked about how great her grandfather was, the energy that comes from it is radically different from the energy of others by the master of the sword, which Tan has yet met. However, this is the only difference. Tan did not feel anything else but this energy. It seems that the old man himself does not understand what power he has. Mujin initially thought that they arrived due to the incident on the island, but for this they behaved too quietly. Although he understood that everything was not so clean here. Meanwhile, she joyfully ran to play with her sister, although the baby did not worry about anything. A little later at noon, Mr. Namgun went to the lake fishing. There, he was in wait for Tan W. The old man told him that in childhood, he never got tired of sitting with a fishing rod for days. A lot of time has passed since he managed to go fishing peacefully. If you think about it, he had long been a chance to sit in such a calm place for a long time. In order to keep up with the other ascending masters of the sword, he had to exchange a fishing rod for 20 years. This was partly in order to glorify your clan. And since then, he was able to achieve the peaks on which he is now. However, looking back, he could not leave behind something worthwhile. He raised the reputation of the clan and climbed to the top of the political faction. Only all this is not at will. The only thing he decided on is the task on the island, but even here he blurred. Namgun was worried that he could not leave anything behind himself. At this moment, Somi came running, who also fishing nearby and was able to catch a large, much fish. Mr. Namgun's jaw dropped when he saw that such a baby had such a catch, and the proud father praised Somi for such an achievement. The next time she promised to catch the fish much more than this and share it with the whole district. Tang 8 promised that he would support her in everything. Namgun Yung looked at them squinted and thought that Tan was reminded him of his youth. For some reason it calmed it. The old man was afraid that the youngest would follow in his footsteps and make the same mistakes, but it seems he was mistaken. The memories of the past of the Namgun-chan involuntarily occurred to the head. He was young. He had 2 beautiful daughters. Once they came running to their father to show what beautiful cranes they made from paper as a gift to his father for his birthday. But he sharply turned away from them and said that it would be better for the girls to engage in training and not all nonsense. In his opinion, weak people are miserable and helpless. Compared to Namgun Chong, who was chasing money and glory all his life, Tan has acquired something more valuable and important, the love of his daughter. But in the case of Namgun Chong, everything was in vain. Suddenly, he heard how Tan gives his daughter's instruction. The more you try to overcome, the higher the wall becomes. At such moments, instead of looking at the wall, try to look around. Surely there is another way. Namgun Yung certainly did not expect to hear such wisdom from his mouth right now. The old man became interested in the young man even more, and Tang was amused by the leader of the alliance of a good opinion about him. At that moment, So-hee suddenly ran to the shore. She told her grandfather that they had a serious problem. She received news from the alliance. Unknown people attacked the advisor, and he is on the verge of life and death. Jung immediately blew up from his seat, and he announced that they were right now. Even the air around thickened from the old man's aura. He was angry. Although weak, there was an aura of death around him. Tan suddenly decided to give the old man advice. Let him beware of his pride and selfishness, because death follows him on his heels. Namgun Yung thanked the young man for the advice, but he promised that he was not going to die so easily. He also apologized for being forced to leave Tanyu's house so urgently, but was glad that he managed to relax in such a beautiful place. Tan at goodbye said that the old man could return here at any time, and after that, the Namgun family on horses hit the road. Mujina was straining that they had left as suddenly as they appeared, but Tan told him that these were their urgent affairs, to which their family had nothing to do. And Mujin said that yesterday in Akiana he heard that a sect Murim appeared there. Recently disagreements arose between the provinces of Akian and Hones, and Tanny did not know about it, because he looked at Somi and was busy. Mujin said that because of those disagreements there were people who want to take over Akan. In addition, they are going to send people to the Island of the Sages to look for something worthwhile. For Tan it was like a splinter in the ass. The appearance of new sects and clans sooner or later leads to the fact that they begin to poke their nose not in their affairs. What Tang and Akian liked was the surroundings of Lake Donchonho, which he liked. But most of all he fell in love with this village for peace and calm atmosphere. A great place to create families and raise children. But it seems they now have problems. Tae himself supported. Does Akian do not belong to them? Tan said that while these are just rumors, do not worry so much. It is better to watch the development of the situation for some time. Despite the fact that the Tang family did not advertise their belonging to the military clan, but thanks to them, Akian was all the time under protection. We can say that they are a clan Tan at Hen. They all this time defended these lands and ruled them. Another letter from the palace came on the road to Soka. People from there go to Akian and persecute the group that attacked an advisor. Several skirmishes have already occurred. The opponents must be quite strong. Namgun Yung said that he would go right in their footsteps and get to Akan, and let Sochi go to the alliance. The granddaughter specified whether grandfather wants to go alone, but he promised that everything would be in order with him. He was not so old. Then she went to the alliance to check how the state of the advisor was, and asked her grandfather to deal with those idiots that they arranged in the palace of the mess. And then I thought of a horse away. By evening, Sochi got to the alliance Murim. She immediately ran to the wounded advisor. Not finding him in her chambers, she asked the servant where the advisor was. She was told that in the main building, and this strained the girl. She instantly went there, and the servants only wondered why their mistress was so inflated. Having reached the office of the advisor, she discovered a strange thing. He was alive and healthy and did not even have the idea why the girl came running so nervous. He asked her why the girl was so out of breath, and where is the head of the alliance. The girl grabbed him by the shoulders and asked if he was in order. He replied that in full. Was something to happen to him? Sochi told him that he and his grandfather received urgent news, that she attacked the advisor, and she was on the verge of life and death. The advisor directly turned white with horror. He did not know about anything like that. Meanwhile, Mr. Namgun rushed alone in the dense forest. Everything looked very strange. There is not a soul around. The message was definitely sent from the Murim Alliance. Only they had such mail pigeons. But the place indicated in the letter seemed wrong. Namgun Jung did not see in the clearing any traces of the Alliance Murim. Suddenly, the unexpected happened. His horse was tangled in hooves in a rope, which was specially stretched between the trees. It was a trap. The horse immediately stood on its hind legs, trying to get out, and thereby threw off Chan. He barely managed to react and land on his feet. Then he realized that it seems that the truth was old. He had to get into such a simple trap. As a friend, he felt something worse. A strange atmosphere and the smell of air. He immediately realized that it was poison. Someone decided to poison him. It was a poison, scattering power, so Namgun could not even do anything. The poison has a fatal effect. It is not so easy to get. In addition to this, from the sky, an arrogance avalanche suddenly rained down on him. And because of the poison, he could not even use his ki to reflect blows. Because of this, several arrows flew in and pierced him directly into his hands. A familiar voice was heard, who said that he did not think that the King of the Sword could be so easily broken. Falling in a fainting, the old man saw that several warriors had appeared in front of him, but their faces covered the masks. They clearly wanted to kill him, and carefully prepared. The leader was their goal from the very beginning. The King of the Sword still rushed into battle, even weakened. Enemies expected such a reaction. Namgun could not allow their victory. If he does not rule, the Alliance Murim will break up. But what could he do alone, poisoned against 3 masters of the sword at once? Since the season began, walks on the water were launched along the lake of Donchonho. Tan was sitting on the shore and wondered if Somi would like such a weekend. Then I decided that it was worth trying to bring my daughter to ride a boat. In the Alliance, Murim at that time rose a Kavard. Sochi already realized that her grandfather was lured into a trap and sent all her strength to search for him. The enemies deliberately lured his grandfather into the forest alone. But who could only plan it? Sometime after the start of the search, the servants found traces of battle in the forest, and even blood on the ground. The alarm inside the plow began to grow, but she tried to calm down and make sober decisions. Grandpa could not lose. Also on Earth, they found traces of explosives. Powder is very difficult to get, unless you are from the Imperial family. The advisor continued the search. There should be more traces. And then he noticed that the smell of sprayed poison was still in the clearing. This acidic poison is especially fatal for Murim's people. Sochi was even more worried. Is the production of such a poison not stopped and more inaccessible? If these are really traces of poison, does this not mean that her grandfather could die? Sochi, the stroke rushed even deeper into the thicket of the forest, wanting to find out. Meanwhile, Tae and Mu Jin himself prepared everything for sailing for a walk. But Tae himself was very cursing at Somi, because she wanted to help them, but in the end she only interfered with her feet and even broke what Tae himself worked on Tae for 2 days. Usually the guy did not do this, but now he had reasons to be angry and screaming. But Somi looked at him with such innocent eyes that he could not swear at her for a long time. And from this helplessness, he was even more angry with the situation than Tan Yu. He scolded Tae himself for screaming at the child. But soon all the quarrels stopped, and the ship finally was ready for their small adventure. Tan looked around the boat and said that it was very good for 2 days of work. Tae himself was glad that he was praised. Apparently, he is more smart than he thought. Mujin told him to keep silent, as most of the work did. Tang, meanwhile, took his daughter in his arms and invited the guys to finally climb aboard. The evening was just wonderful for such a walk. A light breeze swayed a sail and smoothly drove the boat forward. The endless horizon of Lake Donchanho pleased the eye. Maybe this is the meaning of life? Although Tan did not think that the warrior to own a sword was bad, but in the past he clearly saw too much blood. He had no idea how much bliss is such a vacation. While the Tang family was admiring the beautiful landscapes of the terrain, they did not notice that the river, very close to their boat, was painted in red. They continued to look carelessly around, until they felt that the boat suddenly began to shake. They did not believe their eyes when they saw that the boat stumbled upon the body of the Namgun Chan, that he was lying, wounded, in the lake. In the palace, everyone was alarmed and upset that the search did not bring any results. No traces, no hooks. Too many people who want to take the place of the head of Murim, and there are political parties that were beneficial to get rid of him. Since the old man, Namgun, disappeared, has passed as a whole month and a half, and they have not been able to find him or go to criminals. Moon Heckman, the second most influential man in the Alliance, advised the servants of the Palace of the Alliance leader to finally declare to people that the head had missed after the attack of unknown people. The Namgun family has already sent someone. Now they were priority for the security of the alliance. I wanted to quit everything and again engage in the search for the chapter. But it did not make any sense. It was necessary to do business in the alliance. Sochi still did not leave hope that her grandfather could stay alive. But she was haunted by one thing, the bloodied piece of clothes of the grandfather, which they found in the forest. The girl was heartbroken, but she was lucky that there was always a father, who was worried about her. Sochi promised him that she would do everything possible to find his grandfather. A lot of time has passed since the Tang family found the leader of the alliance in the lake. The man survived poisoning with poison dissipating energy, and the battle with such a large crowd. But in the end, he even could survive and finally woke up. This was noted by Tan Wai, who was constantly nearby and followed the condition of the old man. Nam Gun-young was very surprised, but grateful to the man for salvation. In the end, Tang was right. Nam Gun-young, as a master of martial arts, really died. Tan said that if the old man wants, he can inform Muram about everything in the alliance. Nam Gun-young remembered how the inhabitants of the alliance admired him, how they extolled him as a beautiful ruler and chief representative of the power of the Namgun family. Therefore, he asked not yet to report anything, so as not to disappoint his subjects. And he asked Tan at permission to stay in his house for a while. Tang was allowed, but only on condition that the old man will work here. He will not allow him to fall for him. He will not even refer to age. So even the old man standing with one foot in the grave will have to plow for food. In this estate of a man or woman, old or small, all are equal. He told the old man that, as he is better, he could begin to work. Left alone, Namgun talked about that attack. It looked like a well-prepared ambush. But who, damn it, can stand behind it? The election of the next leader of the alliance is just around the corner. Is it really inside the alliance rat, dreaming of taking his place? The old man refused to believe it. Sochi once again returned to the place where they first found the trace of the arranged ambush. Together with her, her father went there. Sochi had already lost the hope that his grandfather survived in that battle. But her father convinced her that their old man was still alive and will return soon. Anything? She is ready for anything to return her grandfather home. Not far from this place, they found traces of blood that they had not noticed before. Traces led to the Akyan. Blood leads to a stream leading to the Lake Donchanho. Therefore, the father of Sochi ordered the servants to immediately send the boat along the trail. The King of the Sword is a symbol of the Namgun family. If he was able to hurt him so much, he probably lost his inner energy. Traces of blood broke off the shore of a stream. Father ordered to send as many people as possible to this place. Let them reach the surroundings. The more people are attracted, the better. The man ordered the servants anything, but to find an old man. And the plow was very grateful to him for this. Grandfather, calmly rested at the Tang Wu family and nursed Somi. He invited the baby to go again, and she happily agreed. Tae and Mugin himself surprised that the old man recovered only 2 weeks ago, and was already so vigorous and energetic. When Somi went with her grandfather to the lake, she announced to him that today they would catch eel. The old man told her that this slippery fish is not so easy to catch. But Somi said that she would keep her tight, and everything will work out. In addition, she believed that there was no fish that grandfather could not catch with her strong right hand. But the girl forgot about the fact that her grandfather lost her in the battle with Unknown. When they went to the lake, the old man asked the girl if it was difficult for her to live in such an estate, remote from school and the city as a whole, and she was worried about whether it was now difficult for him without a hand. The old man really caused discomfort and inconvenience, but Somi felt good in the estate. Let this place be in the wilderness, it does not matter to it. There are no friends here, but there are Dad and the rest. And how to sleep. In the morning, she meets at school with the guys. When he returned, she is met by a loving family. Therefore, she never thought that life in the forest could be difficult. And then she tried to console her grandfather. If he does not have one hand, he can take Sami by the hand of another and go with her like this, carefree. By evening, they returned home with a good catch and caught many eels. Young Namgun thought for not feeling uncomfortable, living in the distance. Somi is right. Although he does not have one hand, there is a second. Wow, the child is able to teach him something. In order not to remain defenseless, Namgun Jung decided to start training the sword ownership with just one hand. It was difficult, tired, but the old man was persistent enough. The man trained all night long, and in the morning it was noticed by Tan W. He noticed that it was still difficult for an old man to control one hand, but praised him for zeal and success. Namgun suggested Tang at fighting swords as a training. Tang wanted to refuse, but Jung promised that he would not get carried away much and fight for the detriment of himself. The owner of the house hesitated. Even if Jung has lost his energy, his main techniques and methods of fighting should be strikingly different from the technique of Te and Mugen. Thanks to the plow, the guy has already seen the art of owning a Namo gun family sword in action. However, what will happen if the king of the sword uses it? Therefore Tan agreed to this battle. For him, it will also be a curious training. The younger ones accidentally heard about this agreement and ran into the courtyard, hiding in the bushes to observe the battle of the masters. Tae himself put on the fact that their owner would win. The king of the sword, Jung or someone. But it is still difficult to win with one hand. Mujin agreed. The words Tae himself make sense. Opponents took up their positions, and the battle began. Tan had asked the elder not to restrain himself and fight in full force. Then the old man instantly began an attack, reaching a huge speed of movements. But in vain, Namgun agreed to this battle. One blow, and cracks spread out of the pride of a man. For a second, Tan knocked out the sword out of the old man's hands and he was unarmed. But the guy did not agree to end the battle on this. He decided to rephrase his request. Let the old man attack as if his life depends on it. Namgun Jung all this time thought that he was already the king of the sword, which means he has nowhere to climb above. However, Tan has changed his attitude. They again clashed in a desperate battle. And this time the old man did not give up so simply. Yes, Tan was strong, dodged from all the blows and constantly drove the old man by the nose, but he fought as desperately as he could. The youngest after a while began to annoy that the battle has been going on for so long. They understood that Tan could finish the battle in a minute. But for some reason the battle has been going on for an entire hour, and the old man was kicking. Namgun Jung was tired, was exhausted, but could not admit that this time he would have to lose. He looked at the Tang from the bottom up and thought that this man, in addition to pure power, had something big. Then Namgun Jung decided to make the last desperate breakthrough, putting all his strength into his attack. Suddenly, everything broke off. He lost consciousness, and when he came to his senses, was already lying in the bed assigned to him. This meant only one thing: a complete defeat. Noticing that the old man woke up, Tae himself entered the room and told the elder not to be too upset. Surviving after a meeting with Tang Yu is an achievement, as the guy believed. Namgun was indignant at the fact that the guy called him an old man, but Tae himself did not see anything like that, and in general, it is disappointed. I thought the heavens would shudder from the battle between the strongest masters of martial arts, but in fact, almost died of boredom. Jung asked the guy if he was using his sword himself. Tae himself laughed and said that he was using, so that the old man cannot compete with him. He, unlike the owner, will put the elder on the shoulder blades in a minute. After that, Tae himself decided to still leave the elder to rest. He did his job. He spent the old man. But before he himself had time to leave the room, he felt something was amiss. He could not react in time, and the old man only filled his face for such boasting with one stick. In the evening, the whole family gathered in the kitchen at dinner. Namgun Jung asked the owner if he could live with them for some more time. Tan did not object. The old man even excited it. Maybe the man agreed to this only because he is sorry for him? He is completely worthless, especially now without one hand. Be that as it may, after Namgun lost his left hand, he finally got a new goal in life. The damn wall which he must overcome. The next day, Namgun and Somi walked together along the city square. Tang had asked him to take the baby to school, but the old man himself was glad to spend time with her. While they walked, Somi interested some interesting counter in the market. It was a store with all sorts of different masks, but the girl liked the most, and she pointed to her, inviting her grandfather to try on. She picked up a black and white mask, and said that she was just for steep uncles with swords. The old man tried on, and she fell on him just in size. Then he asked the seller in whose image this mask was made. He pointed his finger towards the open door. There was a small scene in the courtyard. The man explained, "She arranges for masks, and this is a mask of a protagonist of their performances. The mask of the hero, known as the Mr. Master of the Sword. Now it is very popular in children. Just think, such an impressive name and in some kind of performance." Suddenly the old man heard that different children's voices were heard from all sides, which shouted, "Mr. Master of the Sword." They all surrounded the Namgun Chong, thinking that he was the hero he loved. They shouted that he was the best that loved him began to praise. And Somi was very glad that this mask came up to her grandfather, so the old man bought it at the request of the baby. When Somomi and Jung returned home after school, the girl first ran to her dad, and boasted to him the mask that they bought today. Tan smiled. Still, Somi was able to get her. Namgun, by reaction Tang, realized that his father knew that the girl wanted this mask. The daughter buzzed the eldest all the ears about how cool this mask is, and how much she likes the character she displays. Tan decided that his daughter must have been happy that she had finally received the desired little thing. But Somi frowned and said that it was generally a grandfather's mask. Perhaps she felt a little guilty for begging her, but the baby was not upset. She quite held out the mask of the elder, and she said that it would be better to do homework. And Tani and Young were left alone in the yard. Taking advantage of the case, Namgun asked the guy if he knew anything about poison, scattering energy. Until now, the king of the sword thought that he knew almost everything. But after what happened, he realized how much he was mistaken. He recalled that Tang once told him, "Neither gender nor age play a role in learning. Therefore, it is never too late to learn something new." Tang said that he knew something about poison, scattering energy, because he experienced him several times. Namgun froze in surprise. Tan does not look like a person that has lost energy. So this poison can be neutralized, and Young will be able to restore its strength. He asked Tan at more about telling everything that he knew about the method of detoxification of poison scattering energy. Tan said that usually to find the antipode, you must first find out the way to make poison. How specifically the one who was poisoned by the old man was made, he does not know. Tang had asked if Namgun really thinks that this poison is really able to dispel energy. He does not scatter her at all, but only blocks the streams. He said that the energy that the old man possesses remained in his body untouched. She will simply be blocked until he finds a way to get rid of the poison. Jung caught fire with sincere hope. That means he can return it. But, since the path is blocked, you need to make a hole. Namgun strained and asked to speak more specifically. But at that moment, Tae himself suddenly ran into the courtyard. He interrupted their conversation with cries that trouble happened. Tan was alert. What such incident made the guy do so much noise? Tae himself caught his breath and shouted that the Alliance Murim chose a new leader. Silence hung for a while, but then Tang said that it was natural and predictable. They lost sight of the old. Tan asked Chan, did he really not expect this? He, trying to hide his excitement, said that this was true. Almost 2 months have passed. They do not know. The old man is alive or dead, and they did not find any traces. If the position of the leader of the Alliance was further empty, this would have entailed internal riots. Namgun suggested that the master of Shaolin's Song Jin became the leader. For this role, he approached the best possible way. But Tae himself said that he was wrong. Another person became the leader. Then Namgun called the master of Conlin, but he did not lead the alliance. At first, the name of the real new ruler did not even remember. He was afraid that this might be true. The alliance fell into good hands at all. The alliance was headed by the master of the sword of the clan Moon. Mohenhook Moon became a new head, and this brought Namgun to rabies. Jung shouted that this was nonsense. Counselor Chegal-un could not give his consent to this. But Chegal-Yuen resigned as he returned to the Khans. His position was taken by Manhu Ryan, and this enjoyed the old man even more. With Jin from Shaolin, Zheng Li Quan from Conlin, Chan Chin of Ko from Mudan, all these candidates for leaders, in addition to exceptional skill, had the same exceptional characters, strong as their skills. Moon Hake Moon can be skilled, but not the one who could once become the leader of the alliance. And Manhu Ryan, the new advisor, is involved in corruption. If everything is so, the clan Moon will receive full control over the means of the Alliance Murim, which will allow Manhu Ryan to do everything that will please. Where did everyone who agreed to make this guy with the head look? For such a short gap, they turned Murim upside down. Although, didn't they seek that? What if they are involved in the elimination of the Namogun Chan from the managing position? Meanwhile, Hek Moon in a new position and in the new palace felt very confident. He was really involved in the attack on Namgun. His instinct did not fail him. But Mr. Moon was worried about the fact that for so much time, his followers could not find the body of Namhun. They convinced him that the old man was poisoned with poison, lost his left hand. In this state, he fell from the cliff so that he would never survive. But Mr. Moon wanted to see the body so that his soul was calm, and he was sure that the old man would not return anymore. His main right hand was an adult son who was also involved in the incident, and it was he who got the most. Father taught him so that everything he did was perfect. In such matters, even those sprouts that can only be profit in the future need to be uprooted. Having come to his senses a little, his father asked his son that there was now with the Namogun clan. The guy said that they were still in Hanum, looking for traces of Namgun Chong. Then the new chapter replied that they, of course, are also a problem. But the main thing is Chegal-un. He did not show a single objection, and resigned immediately after the disappearance of the Namgun Chan. So, he perfectly understands what is really happening. The son reported to his father that Chegal-Yuen had just left the Khans and keeps the way to the Hones. It seems that he intends to join the Namgun clan to help find the King of the Sword. The man gave his son a crazy look, and it was clear on him that he did not think anything good. Meanwhile, Namgun continued his training with one hand at the estate of the master Tan Yu. Watching him, Tan said that it seems that Young was not going to return to the Alliance. He did not even deny. And what is the point of returning to him? He lost his strength. Even if he returns, no one will listen to the words of a helpless old man. It was thanks to this force that Moon Moon was able to become a leader. Tang had asked if Mr. Moon Fighter was good. Namgun replied that it was not so easy to cope with him, even when Young was in the best shape. That is why the Alliance chose it. And even if Namgun considers him unsuitable for the role of a leader, what can he? Tan was deeply thought about it. He said that if such a decision of the old master, he will not intervene. Let everything go as it is destined. Young grinned and said that for anxiety that Tang is not characteristic, he will tell the guy something interesting in gratitude. Young decided to tell him something about Gim Van Su, about whom Tang had not heard before. This guy was the best thief in the Central Lands. There was no place in which he could not penetrate, as there was no thing that he could not steal. He was so fast that no one could keep up with him in the Central Lands. Previously, for the sake of fun, Young tracked him and received a tempting scroll, which Tan Yu. Young understood that he was completely useless in this estate, so he would like to thank the Tan at least something. It was a treasure map belonging to GM Van Su. Tang at that same evening notified his family that he was going on the road. He was going to go to Hubei. Somi suddenly perked up and said that she was told at school that there was a sect of Udun. Tae himself said that Somi is right, but the sect is not the best atmosphere in the sect, since they could not find the corpses of 3 heavenly, so it is dangerous to go there. But Tan said that the family would not have to take risks. He will go alone, so everything should go fine. Somi said that she also wanted to go, but it was too far. Besides, the girl should not forget about school. More importantly, the estate cannot be left unattended. If no one goes, all the crops will die. And then Somi and Tae himself realized that he was primarily worried not for them, but for the house. Namgun Young promised that he would look after Somi until the baby's father was in the city. He had long lost interest in all adventures, and therefore did not want to join Tan Yu. So Tai himself, Young and the baby stayed at home, and Tan took the master of Gvon with him and went to look for hidden treasures. Mujin until the last did not know where they were going and why. He did not understand why they should go to Hubei. This is so far, and they have no property or acquaintances there. Then Tan asked him if the guy knows something about Ji Van Su. He knew that this was the name of the great thief. And Tan told what his reason for the trip to Hubei is, in the map that Namgun Jung gave him. It marks the hidden by GM Van Su treasure. Since the information came from the former leader of the Alliance Murim, it should be true. So Tan promised that Mujina would buy everything he wants for help, and he promised to make every effort to find the treasure. But 7 days have passed since that moment, and fatigue has already made itself felt. Mujin barely stood on his feet, and did not understand why Tang was not at all tired of such a long journey. Judging by the map, they have already reached the place called Hanghon. And after the long silence of the forest, human voices suddenly heard. They looked into the nearest building, from where the conversations came. Some company of men had fun and had a good time. Tan Yi and Mujin, in their appearance, realized that these are some bandits. Mujina alerted that they met bandits in some abandoned estate. Maybe they are here for the sake of treasures? But Tan did not at all ceremony with them, and beat the bandits before they could attack the wanderers. At one of them, the guy gave out that the gang settled here for a year or so. In addition to them, no one lives here. In the vicinity they did not find anything valuable. Then Tang pushed the man and realized that there was nothing to catch in this house. And to be afraid too, because after meeting with Tang, the bandits took off away sparkling heels. Mujin worried that Tan is already very seriously configured to find a treasure. Still, they decided to look around in the house, because somewhere there could be a hint. They turned the house upside down, and even began to dig the earth in the yard. Suddenly, Tan finally found a desired hint. He pointed to Mugin to the old stone statue that was in the courtyard of an abandoned house. Tan, she seemed strange. There is no more large decor at home, and only it stands here in the middle of a blooming pond. Tan knocked on her, and the sound came out hollow. He thought to destroy the statue, as another scroll found in her mouth. Mujin joyfully thought that the exact location of the treasure was described there. Tan was not sure, but something was noted on the map. The mark was 4 kilometers from this estate. It seems that they are already close to the treasures of GM Van Su. In order to get to the destination, the guys had to not only go a long way, but also crawl through a long and narrow cave. They went to where the card spoke, but it seemed that they were lost only more and more. Mujin barely had time for the master. He already ended with all patience. I just wanted to return home. take refuge with a blanket, and finally sleep. How was the end of a narrow tunnel ahead? They climbed into a small cave, where they finally could straighten. Not the wall of the Tan of the U found a strange mark with a drawn lion and an arrow indicating upstairs. Mujin felt that Tang had already reached the limit. He asked the guy to hold a torch for him, and he began to break the wall. Mujin tried to warn him that the cave could collapse, but Tang did not listen to him. There was a loud noise that accompanied the bright explosion of the master's energy. Mujin almost turned gray with fear, but still they could get out. But they looked around and realized that they had made a huge loop. They returned to the same place from which they started. Mujin tiredly fell to the ground. He needed to rest a little. They walked in circles for so much time, but Tan did not give up. He looked again at this notorious statue of a lion. He took and broke her with his fist this time. Mujin wanted to scold him for this, but stopped abruptly when he saw the fragments of the statue better. Inside it was a small wooden box. The Tang of the statue should have been defeated at once, as he wanted, and not to mess with a fake map. He was so angry for the first time after the events with a bloody demon. So much time was wasted. Tan smiled murderously and viciously said that only because they still found a treasure, he would not break this GM Van Su into shreds. With his foot, Tan broke the box, and from there a little gold coins fell out, as well as some other scroll. Tang had irritably grabbed this bundle and unfolded it, thinking that there would be another some kind of card inside. But there it was only written mockingly that they were suckers and let them try to go to the treasure map next time. Meanwhile in Honam, Chegal-un was on the verge of life and death. The henchman of Mohinhook Muna followed the instructions of the boss and caught Chegal-una to kill. He scared them with the fact that just so the guys would not get away with it. But the head of the bandits has already enlisted the support of the Moon Clan. It will come out dry out of the water, and Chegal-una will also receive 500 gold nanny behind the head. Chegal-yun, the daughter of a former advisor, tried to intercede for her father, but there was a whole gang against her therefore. No matter how hard they tried to hold on, there is no chance of salvation. At least they thought so. But as if the blessing of heaven appeared nearby, Tan Yu appeared, who threw a vile bandit from the Chegal family. Tani was so angry because of failed searches that he took advantage of the case to take out his anger. The bandits were very unlucky to stumble upon Tang Yu, who was also in such a mood. With his sword, he cut the opponents to the right and left, pulling the outcome of the battle only to be able to pour his negative emotions longer. Opponents fell to earth one after another. They naively thought that the man was just stupid and fearless, since he went to the crowd alone. But they, like everyone who met Tan Wai, underestimated their enemy. At the end of the battle, Tan arranged a huge explosion that demolished all the bandits at the same time, and only then he released him a little. When the smoke was dissipated, Tan noticed that there was another man who had not touched his attack. But Tang, at a light movement of his hand, launched several daggers into him at once and he fell dead. Chegal-yun was shocked by what he saw. Where did such a skillful warrior come from? Mujin squinted at the man. Who would have thought that they would meet Chegal-una in a similar place? He is in danger due to the disappearance of the former leader of the Alliance Murim. When Tan finished dealing with the bandits, he turned to the Chegal family, and he asked if they knew where to find Gim Van Su. Those, unfortunately, had no idea who it was, so Tan and Mujin immediately ran away, and the Chegal family looked after them for some time in surprise. Ian told his father that the person who was with this powerful master is definitely the master of the sword of Mujin. The girl was alert that the guy was from a dark faction, and Una scared it. Does it mean that someone was so powerful in the dark faction? Because Chegal-un was sure that Tan was from there. But Yun told his father that this is not so. The master of the sword, Guan Mujin, is no longer listed among members of the dark faction. She told her father that he was generally considered dead, and then Chegal-yun stopped understanding something. He told his daughter that it was time for him to unite with the Namagun clan and find out the truth. These days, when Somi walked around the square with her friend, she walked joyfully, as if nothing had happened. But even such a baby as her friend felt that something bad was happening in the city, and she asked her friend to walk less along the crowded streets, because many terrible people appeared on them. At home, she spent time with her grandfather, and he said that Somi would not hurt to learn martial arts so that she could stand up for herself. But Somomi told him that he hates fights, and this is all definitely not for her. Jung told her that martial arts were studied not only for battles, they also train their heads and support the body healthy. Perhaps the time will come when Somi will have to protect someone important for her. Then such knowledge will be very useful. After a friend's words about the danger in the streets, Somi seriously thought about starting training in martial arts. After another walk in the city of Somi, she returned home in high spirits. And there she found that Dad and Mugin had finally returned home. The girl joyfully jumped on her father and hugged his neck. And then she fell asleep with many questions. How he spent time, whether he was hurt nowhere. Tan admitted that after the trip he was a little angry, but he saw his daughter and his mood immediately improved. At that moment, Namgun came up and asked what the guys managed to find in the cache of the great thief. Those directly turned pale with anger and asked them to not ask about anything at all what was connected with this journey. At that moment, Tay himself entered the courtyard, who only returned from the market. Having met the master, he asked him how everything went. Instead of a detailed answer, Tang got the mocking note from his bosom, which they found in the box, and he handed it to Tay himself to see. It immediately dawned on him what it was, and he laughed merrily. The guy took her from Tantu to expand, and then he burst into a laugh even more. He told the master that there was a rule from where he was from: create these cards and play people. This treasure map makes fools go in search of anything. And it turns out that the cache, who found Tan Wai, made Tay himself, still a long time ago. In general, he initially wanted to sketch out packets in a box, but did not want to touch them. Suddenly he froze and sharply stopped telling them about it. He finally came to him one simple question. Where did Tan come from this note? And then Tay himself realized that he had become very much. He immediately, stuttering, put it to them that he had very urgent affairs and ran away, realizing that he was waiting for him if Tang caught him now. The guys gave him 3 seconds of the handicap, and then Tan told Mugen to bring Tai himself back into the yard, and he was only glad to catch the Joker. Meanwhile, uninvited guests appeared near the lake. On the shore, the cult of a windy sword suddenly appeared. They learned from boaters that this is the deepest lake in the district, and here there is an estate nearby, in which, in theory, they could stop. The young chapter of the cult was very interested in them, because the local family belongs to the imperial family. Shouldn't the purchase and sale be prohibited? The advisor to the head explained that the owner of Domka has some kind of ties with a local official, but, strangely, no one knows exactly who the owner is. Huja Ren, the leader of the cult, knew the legend that the god of war was sealed in the deepest part of Lake Donchonho. At first he thought it was nonsense, but his traces were discovered on the island of the sages. That is why he arrived in Akian. After that incident with the secret cave, the existence of the god of war ceased to be a legend. If their cult finds it, then they will instantly rise and become one of the 10 great cults. Therefore, Ja Ren ordered his soldiers preparing, and he decided to make a visit to a mysterious estate. Meanwhile, the poor Tay himself was well struck by his trick. In addition, Tan came up with a special punishment. He had to stand on his knees, lifting his hands up until he gets tired of his death. Tay himself was insanely upset. Well, how does he know that this card will get to Tan Wai? There is really no guilt here. Tan himself is to blame for the fact that he wanted to take possession of someone else's property. While Tay himself was thinking about this, he heard that someone had come to them and knocks on the gate. Tan told him. Only then did the guy finally be able to lower his hands to open the door, but Tan viciously glanced at him. And Tay himself again had to stand with his hands raised, and the door came to open Mujin. Without even opening the gate, he felt a threatening aura. Outside stood a whole crowd of people. When the guy opened the door, he frightened. He did not expect this crowd would be so huge. Ja Ren smiled affably at the young man and asked if he was living here. Mujin demanded a man immediately to introduce himself. And Ja Ren did this, saying that they were a cult of a windy sword, and he asked to bring the owner of this estate to him. While waiting, Ja Ren was surprised to look at Tay himself that he stood, raising his hands upstairs. But his attention immediately switched to Tan Wai when he came. The guy introduced himself to him, but Tan was more interesting to find out why his cult came here. The straightness of the owner angered an arrogant guy, and then he decided not to walk around the bush. He said that he wanted Tang to sell his estate. Ja Ren threw a thick bag under the feet of a man, full of coins to the top, thinking that it would not be difficult for him to bribe him. He made sure that a large amount was lying inside the bag, and Tang would be satisfied. But he kicked the bag with his foot, refusing to accept the money. Tan said that this amount will not be enough. The warriors of the cult were outraged by his impudence, but the leader reassured them. He asked how much Tan wants for the estate then. He replied that 10 million gold nanny. Ja Ren laughed, thinking that the man was joking so much. But he was simply not going to sell the estate. Ja Ren looked at him irritably, but asked to contact him if the man still decides to sell the estate. And then he turned and left. Mu Jin whispered to Tani, "It does not seem that this guy is ready to give up so easily." Then Tan went to the Namagun to find out more about the cult of the Windy Sword. Young found out about them when he took Somi to school. It seems that they recently captured Akian's streets. It is not surprising that the guys have not heard about them. Cults come and leave. It is strange that these turned out to be so stubborn. Tan said that it is quite natural that someone would want to take advantage of their power after gaining it. This also applies to the cult of a windy sword. They left peacefully, but they had some goal, and the estate is only one of the means of its achievement. Tan convinced his comrades that the enemies would definitely return. Staying in his estate, Jia Ren was looking for all the information about Tan Yu, whom he could only find. He learned that his daughter was studying at Chonsun School, but he has no work. Jia Ren thought that Tan must have given a huge bribe to the local official, and also pays a lot of money for his daughter's training. Where does he only take so much money for all this? The leader of the worship of the Windy Sword was annoyed. He hoped that hundreds of silver nanny had to be spent on solving the problem with the estate, but the situation began to tire. Then he ordered the servants to send people to school. If they take his daughter, Tang will be powerless. The next day, Somi went to school, and after classes waited for someone to pick her up. I didn't have to wait long. Very soon in the crowd she saw her grandfather. She joyfully ran to him and attacked her arms. But they didn't give them so easy to leave. Her teacher quietly called her grandfather her teacher. Somi remained to wait outside, and Mr. Namgun was left alone in the classroom with her teacher. He suddenly said that the old man did not expect to hear it all. Supposedly, Somi has a poor influence on other children. It's all about the game in which she plays. Namgun at first did not understand that it was bad in ordinary children's games. But the teacher said that this game causes excitement. So many students have become dependent on this. And the instigator was Somi. Chan had nothing to object, but, in his opinion, in this case, only warnings would be enough. However, according to the teacher, there are many children of influential families in their school who complain that Kumi violates the educational atmosphere. Namgun ordered the man to stop walking around the bush. And the teacher said that they could not allow Somi to attend the Chonsun school. Namgun Young frowned, but did not dare to say anything against it. He turned around and said that he would transmit this information to the girl's father. But he was alert that representatives of the educational institution decided to find shortcomings in Somi, and so insignificant and so suddenly. Is it really all this set up the cult of a windy sword? When Namgun went outside, he saw Somi, who obediently waited for him to go home. She was not stupid at all and, according to conversations around, realized that she could no longer go to school. She held on to well done and did not become very upset. At least show it to the eldest. Namgun Young promised that then he himself would teach the girl everything that you need to know, so Somi did not yearn much. While they walked around the city, Somi's eyes fell on a beautiful shop with sweets, and she asked her grandfather to buy her a little. But as soon as they came closer, the seller suddenly said that the shop was closing. Namgun arched a thin eyebrow inquiringly. The seller began to somehow uncertainly, stupid to lie that they did not sell today, that they sold everything, although the counter was full of goods, and ultimately closed the shop, running away as he said to his parents that they feel bad. The old man hesitated. What does all this mean? When he looked around, he saw that in general all the sellers fled in the corners and avoided meeting him and Kumi. When they came home, they told Tanyu. He tried to treat this calmly, but suddenly Tae himself burst into the courtyard with indignant cries. Tan asked him what happened. He said that he went to the city to buy everyone, and everyone was repeating to him that nothing was sold, and it is time for them. He, like Mr. Namgun, suggested that there were guys behind this, with whom they did not sell the mansion. But Namgun had already changed his mind by then. Allegedly, the cult would not resort to such miserable methods. Tae himself stood his ground and was sure of his own right, and Mu Jin, oddly enough, supported him. A cult is not a cult, but there will always be bastard bastards. It didn't get to Tan at all than they were all so concerned about. Tae himself then lost his temper and asked the man that, for example, they will wear if no one would sell anything to them. Somi confidently said that they can sew clothes themselves. This is not a problem. Tan supported her and said that by large, nothing had changed. He said that if he was doing Tae himself, he has golden hands. Tae himself, with grief in half, agreed, but asked where they would take spices and warm clothes. Tan finished the family assembly, saying that it was too early to think about it. Meanwhile, Jia Ren lay in his chambers and thought that it was strange that Tan still did not appear to him. He ensured that Somi banned from school and forbidden merchants to sell something to his family, and Tang still did not come to pray for help. Then the guy naively thought that Tan, maybe he had already collected his things and left. But the servants reported that the Tang family is, as if to prove that they do not need money. They were caught for lunch in the lake of Donchonho. They sew clothes and blankets from animal skins. And they even grow plants, thereby replenishing food supplies. What really did not like the leader of the cult. Then he asked what about bribed people. The servant reported that the guards refused to arrest the Tan W family. Probably for them, the owner of the estate is akin to God. They say that they will not dare to touch him with a finger. Then Ja Ren did not have any other choice but to take business in his own hands. He ordered his people to be disguised as his people and go to the estate. They did so. They came to the house of Tan Wai and said that they had received a decree that everyone should move out of the estate momentary. The leader of the detachment also wanted to pretend to be the head of the district for eating persuasiveness. But Tae himself, knowing the real chapter, thought that the man just went crazy. The rest of the family and the Thai himself explained to the yard, and the rest of the family himself pulled up. Tan decided to personally talk to them and asked if he had really missed some letter from Hong Wan-chan. The chapter was indignant that the guy calls Mr. Hong simply by name. And he also said that he was temporarily replacing him. He repeated his decree again. The Tan family must immediately leave the estate. There was nothing to build it on the territory of the emperor at all. Somi intervened in their conversation and stated that they did not build anything. Supposedly the house here was before them. Tan was very uncertainly supported her words, knowing that this is not true. The dummy chapter stood his ground. They bought it or not, they should not be here by tomorrow. What surprised everyone around him? Tang pulled on his mouth an insincere smile and said that he agreed to leave the house, which was very amused by the man. Therefore they, pleased with the work done, turned and went away. The Tang family instantly panicked. Will the owner really allow these deceivers to take the house? They will have nowhere to go even. Tan smiled frighteningly again and told his relatives not to worry. He has one idea. At this time, a challenge official of the cult went to the city of Nightmare and other people. He forced the merchants to pay money for renting a place in the square, although they should not. And in every possible way he deceived and humiliated people, especially those that could not stand up for themselves. They were lucky that the magistrate was not in the city. Otherwise their deception and terrible behavior would be immediately punished. Therefore people, trembling, prayed that the magistrate would return to the city as soon as possible. The guy that arranged lawlessness in the city, meanwhile, feasted and was generally in a good mood. He enlisted the support of the sect of Windy Swords and will soon receive a lot of money. What to worry to him? So far he was only a fake head of the district, but soon this position was to be right. He was lucky to acquire ties in the cult of Windy Swords that dominate in Akian. They promised to take care of Mr. Hong, and in the end he would give the liberated position. In addition, he figured out the estate as promised. At least he thought so. But his appetite was spoiled by a service girl who had dinner with him. She told him about rumors about the estate in the west. The very one he just thought about. It was rumored that the deity lives in that estate. The giant estate was erected in just a day, and Chanpek's son and the Black Fraction immediately disappeared somewhere. No one dares to approach this place. They say that even Chan Monthly makes him reproach every month. The man only laughed. It seemed to him that all this was nonsense and gossip. And after his speech began to suddenly braided, he tried to understand what was happening, but everything floated before his eyes and he lost consciousness. When the man woke up, he was no longer in his own estate, and on the slope, in the middle of the forest, and was suspended upside down on a tree. The guy cried out with horror when he noticed that there were 4 strong men in masks in front of him. Although they covered their faces, the liar easily recognized them, and he promised that it would not get away with them. He realized that they were the same, from the mysterious estate. When Tan saw that a man still had enough strength to flounder, he ordered Tae himself to pacify the captive a little. He picked up the bat, and without restraining, beat him with the prisoner. When the whole body of a man was already covered with bruises, he prayed for mercy. He admitted that he did all this only because of the instructions of Huja Ren, and he himself was not to blame. Namgun was interested in that Tang had an idea, but he did not like that everything took such a serious turn. Although, if you think better, Chong even liked this feeling that he had finally tasted the forbidden fruit and at least a little diversified his life. After the man posted all the information to them, Tan ordered Tae himself to release the poor captive. The guy did not really want to let him go, but there is an order. But it was worth it to come closer. The rope could not stand it. He did not even have time to touch the man, as she suddenly broke, and the prisoner flew down. Given that he hung over a large abyss, he flew from a great height. No one expected and did not want such an outcome. But it only remained to pray that the man miraculously managed to survive. 10 days have passed since then. Ja Ren was unhappy that he still did not work out. Those who were supposed to run, sparkling heels, are still here, and the monk that volunteered to deal with them, as if through the ground fell through. How did it happen? Of course, Ja Ren can leave the estate and just switch to search in the vicinity of Danchanho, but now it was already a matter of pride. He spent so much time and money that he was obliged to get this estate no matter what. Suddenly, One of his subordinates ran into the cabinet of the leader. He said that their detachment found the body at the foot of the cliff on Mount Yahello. It was their monk, Yakchen. Ja-Ren immediately went to the detective department to make sure of all his own eyes. There, investigators confirmed that the body of the monk was found today. They thought that the monk just committed suicide, but Ja-Ren told them that it was a murder. Investigators refused to believe in such a terrible accusation until the guy provides them with the standing evidence. They already had a lot of business. It was not enough to engage in some stupid versions from the mouth of an unfamiliar person. Hearing all these disputes and noise, none other than Mr. Hong went out into their yard. He finally returned to the city from a business trip. What Ja-Ren was not very happy about. Vaughn Chana was interested in the impudent person of the guy, and he asked who, in his opinion, could turn out to be the murderer of the monk. He first mentioned him the estate that was located near Lake Donchonho, and then he stated that the poor guy was killed by people who live in this estate. He, as the leader of the worship of a windy sword that protects Akian, said that he would not leave this matter just like that. Then Mr. Hong already said that he knew everything that was happening in the city until he was there. Chan put his hand on Ja-Rena's shoulder and said that if he did not want to bear responsibility for all these riots in the city, let him not approach this estate by the lake. Such as Ja-Ren, do not poke his nose there. Let him think about it for the sake of his own good. There, Chan turned his back to him and said that, let Ja-Ren return to his cult and not lean out from there. What was more angry with an arrogant guy? He irritably asked why everyone protects this estate to one. Ja-Ren promised to prove to them all how great the power of the windy sword over Akan, and he ordered his servant to collect all the representatives of the cult. He promised today to destroy this damn estate, so much so that only ash will remain from him. At night his cult went on the offensive. Ja-Ren ordered his people to be killed on the estate of all, to a single, even a small daughter of the owner. A huge crowd without an invitation invaded the territory of the estate, jumping over the fence, jumping onto the roof of the building. But in the yard, they were already waiting. Mr. Namgun, the most experienced from the Tan family, knew that they would come. And at the same moment when his voice was heard, a small stone flew into the face of one of the minions of the cult, disorienting him. The king of the sword stood in the middle of the courtyard, and the same mask of black and white hero was worn on his face. He did not even shudder when a detachment of warriors landed on the ground right in front of him. He demanded to explain to him, why are they secretly trying to penetrate into someone else's house under cover of night? The mystery of the old man Ya-Reina was not impressed. It was just a children's mask. But the man rudely answered him that he was not an old man. He is the master of the sword. This statement, although it was very dramatic, only made his opponents laugh. Ja-Ren thought that the old man had already fallen into insanity once he gives out such jokes. It's time to send him to the next world. Then Mr. Namgun decided to teach them all nobility. A whole crowd of opponents simultaneously attacked him from all sides, but he could even resist them with a whole hand. The enemies mixed up that he imagined himself a hero. They humiliated him in every possible way, but the master did not even listen to their words. Not so long ago he and Tan discussed how the king of the sword would do if the cult of Wind reveals his swords and attacks. He was sure that they would not do this, because they were allies of the Alliance Murim. But at that time he was deeply mistaken. But even then he promised that in the event of an attack he would intervene personally. Tan doubted whether the old man would cope with one hand and without internal energy, but he was the king of the sword in the end. Namgun dodged the attacks of the pawns, but then Ja-Ren himself attacked him. Only Namgun Young without much effort threw him into the wall so that he pierced his hole in her. He hit the leader of the cult so much that everyone around them froze for a moment, and then they attacked with renewed vigor to defend the honor of his leader and take revenge. Mr. Namgun turned his attention to how they hold swords in their hands, and the thirst for the blood they experience. It must be not the first time for them. But Namgun stood over everyone and had no idea what was happening below. He believed that the dark fraction differs from the light and would never step on the path of a demonic cult. But, to think only, these people, who attributing themselves to the bright fraction, came to the house of the baby Somi with the intention of shedding blood. How was he ignorant? Unrest in the Alliance is entirely his fault, but he will be those who correct everything. Mr. Namgun waved his sword and struck them suddenly on the ground, putting full force into his blow. The earth shook, and he threw away enemies a few meters away. At that moment, Ja-Ren noticed that the old man has only one hand and ordered everyone to aim at her. But everyone who ran to the Namugun Chun was thrown back, killed by the sword of a powerful master. One blow, and the enemy's head was already flying to the side. Then Ja-Ren decided to use his inner strength and he stuck a hot sword into the back of the warrior. At this time, the Tang family quietly sat inside the estate, hoping for the best. Mu Jin was worried about the old man. It is not so easy to cope with the whole cult with just one hand. He had to risk his life. Tan mysteriously asked the guy if he knew what the difference between those who reached the top and those who could not. Mu Jin suggested that in the applied effort, but Tang did not agree. The point is in instinct. A born master of martial arts instinctively finds a way out of any situation, and he believed that Mr. Namgun would be just like that. The real master sees the path to which he must follow. Despite the fact that Jung was wounded, he did not leave hope for victory and continued to fight. Almost all the warriors of the cult were already killed, so it remains only to stand against Jia Ren and finish it as soon as possible. Their swords crossed in a desperate battle. Sparks of energy and contact from metal poured in different directions, stirring up the atmosphere. Jia Ren wanted to show the old man how great the gap between them was. No matter how excellent Namgun knew the foundation, he looked only an amateur who was not even able to use inner power. Therefore, the guy did not hesitate to use his Chui in full. He will not lose to such an insignificant master. Having filled his sword with black energy, the guy again wounded the old master, but this time in the chest. Namgun flew away by inertia a few meters ago, barely standing on his feet. His body was saturated with unbearable pain, but suddenly this only gave him the strength and motivation to stand to the end. He understood that perhaps he could not win. The difference between him of the past, when he still had internal energy, and the current one was too large. So much so that he is even ashamed to call himself the king of the sword. But should shame push him back? That feeling from childhood is still fresh in his memory. Feeling when you come across something that you can't do it, and when the blood boils from the desire to win. Namgun did not even think that he would ever experience him. This could even be called a sense of pleasure. He came to his senses again and sternly told the guy to attack. He was furious from how self-confident this old man was, although he lost to him. Anger, hatred saturated his blade along with inexhaustible energy, and the guy that there is strength to hit the king of the sword. The battle lasted all night, and the clang from the collision with swords spilled throughout the district. And in the morning, the doors to the estate opened. On the threshold stood Mr. Namgun. All his clothes were saturated with blood, but he did it, he returned. And at the same moment he fell powerlessly to the earth, having lost consciousness, unable to restrain himself anymore. Mu Jin was shocked. How could the old man win the whole army without internal energy? Tan was proudly smiling. The old man learned a lot in this estate, and after that he said to Mu Jin to contact the department. When Mr. Hong arrived at the estate, he was furious. Seeing what happened, he ordered his investigators to immediately arrest those warriors of the Windy Sword that were still alive. They did so, and then they led them from the estate. All day, people in the city talked about them as criminals who were caught while trying to kill innocent people. And everyone was only happy about this because they have suffered a lot from this cult recently. When Somi woke up in the morning and saw her grandfather tortured, she tried to find out who he had fought with. The old man said that this is not the case, and he was not at all such a person that he is climbing into fights. But Somi did not believe him, and she reported because Dad told her that fighting was bad. Tan praised her and agreed that it was impossible to fight. Tae himself laughed and said that Tan is really not fighting with anyone. He just knocks out all the shit out of the victims, for which I received from Tang on the head. And after the man invited them to forget about what happened, since the conflict with the cult was finally settled. Mu Jin was worried, because if a new cult appears in Acheon, then everything can happen again. He was interrupted by Namgun. He invited the guys to take advantage of the fact that there is no large cult in Akang now, and build a banner founding your own cult. On the same day, the news that the cult of the Windy Sword was destroyed reached the head of a demonic cult. They could not help but pay attention to the suspicious owner of the estate, Tan at Hen, as well as the great master, who introduced himself to the master of the sword. All of them seemed to the leader, Haku, suspicious. Therefore, he decided to independently visit the estate and find out what's what. And on the Tan estate, Hen was talking about establishing his own clan. Namgun said that if rumors are spreading about their influence in Acheon, there will be fewer similar cases. But Tang did not agree, because they will only aggravate the situation. Everyone who wants to use them will float here. If Tan was originally going to do this Hong Wan Chan would not give up for nothing. Therefore, Tan suggested to wait until the case of Better turned up. The whole family of Tan would be glad to create a cult, but the word of the owner is the law. Therefore, young Namgun hoped that at least Komi would be able to interest martial arts. In the evening, he sat with her on the porch and told the girl about the history of the Central Plains. The story itself was longer than 1,000 years old. The history of the current culture of martial arts began a very long time, We can say that the founders were the gods of the war, three heavenly and the great master of Dharma from Shaolin. Jung told Somi that three heavenly are great people who had a huge impact on Murim. Until now, only 3 people have been awarded the title of heavenly. Somi asked if the heavenly were so outstanding, then what about the god of war? Namgun said that the god of war is legendary. They say that no one could surpass him even after 1,000 years. They say that one wave of his sword is able to cut the sky, and one blow could crush the mountains. According to rumors, he came out of the battle with tens of thousands of martial arts masters. Jung admitted that if they lived at the same time, he would have asked for his students. Suddenly Tan snorted and said that he would not have taken the old man into students. He had nothing more to do. The old man said that he was not to be in the disciples, and Tan answered that the god of war would not have taken him either, and he cut off that he knew it for sure. Then Somi said to his grandfather, "If all this is true, then the god of war was the strongest man in Murim. Best of all?" Namgun said that it was, and Tan intervened. Maybe the god of war was the strongest, but definitely not the best. Then the old man asked who Tan considers the best. The man was silent. And then he suddenly tensed so much that he broke the saucer with his palm that he had been holding in his hand before. He said that the bloody demon was the best in Murim. At night, the old man went for a walk and arranged a picnic on a forest cliff, from where both the estate and all the surroundings were clearly visible. He has never been there before. Just think. Behind the estate hides such a beautiful place. While he was drinking suj on a cliff, the words of the bloody demon did not come out of his head. The old man was surprised. How can Tan know more about the past than he knows? Who is he at all? Where did he come from? And why does not want to show the world how strong? The more time the old man spent on the estate, the more he asked questions. When he descended from the cliff back and walked home, he accidentally stumbled upon 3 graves, which he did not know about the existence. He was surprised that the grave hills are in such a strange place. Therefore he came closer, interested. On them, to his great surprise, he read the names of the 3 heavenly. But why are the graves of the 3 heavenly here? He thought that the remains of the masters took the demonic cult. Then he suddenly remembered the question of the granddaughter of Sochi. Can people live 1,000 years? And everything fell into place. Namgun returned to the estate only in the morning when no one was sleeping. And ignoring the presence of other family members, he approached Tan Yu. The old man asked him, was he somehow connected with the god of war?